Hey everybody, welcome to the Hang Up. It's Wednesday evening. I'm Matt Dillahunty, and I'm here by myself. And for those who just saw somebody ask, what's an AMA? An AMA is an Ask Me Anything. J Mike was supposed to be on with me tonight, but J Mike had a conflict come up that we weren't really expecting. So J Mike, you get moved to another time, and I'm flying solo tonight, which means you get more of me than you can probably stand. But I didn't, honestly, I almost just said, let's just take the night off, but I need this. I need to come hang out with you guys, take questions and everything else. So tonight we're doing a number of different things differently. Starting with Matt's not going to be able to speak correctly. There will be probably no breaks. I mean, I guess we can emergency go to black or let the producer talk over some dead space. If I should have peed before we started, I guess. Also, there's no help. Arden's producing, so if I run out of something to drink, I can't even have the producer go get me a drink. This is just a hot mess, and that's what we like. Welcome to the Hang Up, where I talk about the things that I'm hung up on, and tonight we're going to see what you guys are hung up on. So normally, every time we do this show, we set a super chat threshold of $10, which means after we do like my 30 minutes of intro and talking, then we take questions for about an hour, then we'll read all the super chats, and we read everything that's over $10. Tonight, and tonight only, unless it just works out amazing, we're going to do all the super chats over $5, which means I could be here for ages. So if it turns into one of those things where you guys want me to answer questions at $5 a pop for 4 hours, we might bump up the threshold, after a good few hours of doing this. Also, we're still, all the lines are open. Well, not all the lines are open. There's 3 people already ready. We will be taking theist callers first. That's the way I run all the shows, because it's my special ballywick of the things that I'm most concerned about. And there are people on Twitter who have been trying to challenge me with all kinds of stuff, and I'd like for them to call in. I'm also, because it's just me, I'm going to bet that even if there are contentious people and contentious theists, tonight goes smoothly and relaxed, and I'm not even medicated yet. We might figure that out. But yes, all super chats over $5 will run everything else. As a reminder, you can get your applications in by going to Q&A.line.com, and there's an application there to apply to be on InBoss, one of our new debate shows. And we're going through submissions now for the people who've requested a spot on the show. By the way, I am not always the end boss. It just going to depend on what the subject is. Arden might be the end boss for something. Katy might be the end boss for something. Jimmy might be the end boss for something. Shannon, Forrest. You get some want to debate or present your case for some sort of creationist thing. Erica might be end boss. It is a 1 hour format that is not designed to merely be a debate. It is a chance for you to present your case for, I forget what the exact times are. We'll go through the format another time. We'll present your case in, let's say, like 10 minutes, followed by questions from the audience, from people who, through super chats, and from people watching in chat, get their questions in to kind of grill you and run you through the gauntlet. And then the last segment, or the next to the last segment, will be whoever the end boss is. After listening to what you said, what the audience said, they get to direct a few questions your way that are supposed to be designed to cut to the quick and get down to the heart of the matter. And then you will actually get, apart from thank you everybody for tuning in, we'll see you next time, whatever else, you get the last word as well. First word, last word. And as long as, you're not awful, you're not calling people names, you're not presenting hateful, misogynistic, X-phobic, whatever nonsense, then you'll get to make your case here. We don't really edit the shows. It's all live. And you'll get to run the gauntlet through callers and everything else. So if that's something you think that you're interested in doing, by all means, submit, and you can be on InBoss as well. Tonight, it's an AMA, as I mentioned, that's kind of an Ask Me Anything. And that means that if you've got questions that you've always wanted an answer to, or you feel like I've ducked or dodged, you can call in an answer. I can't promise you that you're going to get a robust answer or an answer you like, and I'm probably not going to go over the same ground 20 times tonight. But if If there was something else, by all means, tonight would be the night to call in and do it. It's also a great night to call in and defend either your supernatural or religious beliefs or political views. Um, I had in my notes, nothing is off limits, but some answers may be shorter than others. Obviously, if you are just calling in to, be awful or whatever else, we'll edit it out. You're not going to be on. But you don't have to lie to the call screeners. You don't have to call up and say, well, I want to demonstrate why I believe God's real, and then call in and go like, you're not a vegan or trans people suck or whatever it is that you guys are up in arms about. I got a couple of news stories that I wanted to touch on, and then we're going to get right into calls. I won't be as good at multitasking today and getting in chat, but I see we've already got 3 callers. Good to go. 20 women are now suing the state of Texas, saying that the state abortion laws have endangered their lives. Reading here from NPR.org. Christina Nunez's doctors had always advised her not to get pregnant. She has diabetes, end-stage renal disease, and other health conditions. And when she unexpectedly did become pregnant, it made her extremely sick. Now she's suing her home state of Texas, arguing that abortion laws in that state delayed her care and endangered her life. Her and 6 other women have joined an ongoing lawsuit, which was originally filed back in March with 5 patient plaintiffs. More patients have now joined the lawsuit. It's now up to 20, with 2 OBGYN doctors also part of the lawsuit. And after a dramatic hearing in July, a district court judge agreed with the plaintiffs that the law needed to change, but the state immediately appealed her ruling directly to the Texas Supreme Court. That move allows Texas's 3 overlapping abortion bans to stand. This is going to continue going forward. There's a lot of the stuff we talked about in the when you have a worldview where it's abortion bad, and that's the extent of your take on this, it's how you end up with draconian laws that end up risking people's lives. And one of the things, and granted, yes, I'm about as lefty progressive-y as you can possibly get. I'm not even just in favor of a right to abortion. I mean, yes, I'm pro-abortion, not just pro-choice. I want as many abortions as there need to be given the circumstances. I don't understand how we can go around denying people's bodily autonomy. However, I realize that my position is going to be too extreme for some people. And so, like many other people, I've been willing to do some compromises, not the least of which are the reasons behind it, not least being I can't get pregnant. And I want a maximal freedom, or maximal reasonable freedom for everybody. And I realize that sometimes there's going to have to be compromises. When you look at something like Gaza, which, by the way, I'll take calls on today, but my thoughts really haven't changed a lot. Hamas is awful. Israel's maybe slightly better. I mean, they're not a terrorist organization, but it's a really complicated thing. I don't know how you can have a ceasefire. I'd love for there to be one. I'd love for at least a temporary halt so we can get some humanitarian efforts in place. I don't know how you can work out a ceasefire with an organization like Hamas, but I would love to find some sort of solution. I don't have a solution. I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to crack and solve the problem in the Middle East at all. But when you have this sort of simplistic abortion bad view, that makes you write laws that are terrible. Similarly, if you think God's granted you this land, or these people are just evil, or whatever else, however it goes, when you put up a straw man caricature, it's of course easy to knock down. And you can look incredibly good with some talking points and bumper sticker talking points that don't begin to address the broader issue. And for me, in Gaza, there are innocent people who are dying. And I think there's a lot of fault to go around. But I watched John Oliver's take on it from last Sunday. And I thought he did a really good job of addressing the complexities of the situation and where there's enough blame to go around to many individuals. And I don't know what to do about it. I think it'd be silly of me to say, "Oh, yep, here's the solution to peace in the Middle East." I just know that when we're summarizing things in ridiculous ways. For example, I called after they censured another member of Congress. I called for another member to be censured because he, on the floor of the House of Representatives, basically said, there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian. That's like saying an innocent Nazi. And that is the sort of gross oversimplification. And it's worse than an oversimplification. It's just a slur. It's just ridiculous. When you talk about, the Palestinian people, they voted for Hamas. Yeah, they did. Like back in 2006 when Hamas was trying to be the nice face in competition with a worse organization. And when, half the people there are under 18, that means none of them voted for this, and yet they're all living under it. I get it. The big difficulty here is when you have member organizations trying to solve problems with sovereign nations. The United States is never going to let the UN or anybody else come in and dictate what we can and can't do. And yet that's exactly what needs to happen in some cases. And like I said the other day, and in my personal preference would be for a third party, a united third party, a collection of nation states focused on humanitarian issues would come in to try to resolve this so that we're not just all about annihilation. But anyway, that's it there. The abortion case is going to be interesting to see what happens. There were two other cases, and both of these I mentioned before, Hemant Mehta, my friend who runs the Friendly Atheist news blog and has for decades now, and is easily one of the best of us. And I don't say that lightly. I can't count the number of times we've just gotten news stories straight from him. So if you go to friendlyatheist.com, you can go there and you can please consider subscribing and please consider becoming one of Hemit's supporters. This is not a paid advertisement. I haven't talked to Hemit. He doesn't know that I'm doing this. This is not the line officially in supporting Hemit or anything else. It's just for ages, we have all relied, all by content creators, we've all relied on so much content from Hemit. If you are able to do so, and by all means, there's ways that you can support the line here as well. But if you're able to do so, head over and please consider becoming one of Hemit's supporters. The two news stories that he hit on, one of them I saw elsewhere, which was a gospel singer named Bobby Storm posted a video online in which she sings on a plane because that's what the Lord wanted her to do. And when the head flight attendant came over to ask her to stop, she was like, but they're liking it. And this is what the Lord wants me to do, and all this other stuff. And, they're enjoying it. And then put the flight attendant in a position to say, well, I'm not. When the truth is that flight attendant may have enjoyed that at another time, but he had to speak for all the people who aren't going to be comfortable saying, yes, I'm trying to fly on a plane. I'd rather you weren't here singing. I know Christians who would have loved her song and her performance, would have been annoyed to no end to be stuck there listening to this. You don't get to take advantage of a situation where you have a captive audience and then impose your will over anybody and everybody else. Oh, well, they can put earbuds in. Yeah, well, some people didn't necessarily bring earbuds, or maybe it doesn't drown it out, or you can use whatever excuse it is. The end result is that you feel like you have to do this. Everybody else's freedom be damned. There was another incident of somebody basically yelling on a plane about how everybody needed God. And then that same person, I think it was the same person, was yelling at a gym about how people needed God. It's kind of ridiculous. And this story I just saw a little while ago, hopefully Hemit won't be mad that I actually just read portions of what he has to say outright. But Brad Briscoe in Anderson County, Kentucky, wants to punish a counselor and school superintendent because his gay daughter's counselor interfered with their anti-gay bigotry. Now, I'm going to make it really clear here. We don't have all the details, and the school isn't talking. And there are certainly things about this story that I find very concerning from the counselor. And there may be actual wrongdoing. I don't know. I've got what Hemit's report is. I'm going to run through it real quick for you guys. And it's actually Hemant. But I'm going to run through it real quick. I am not saying who's in the right here, but the takeaway from all of this is that there's a 16 or 17-year-old girl at a Kentucky school who's was in a relationship with another girl. Her parents were bigoted and opposed to it, didn't even know it was happening, and she sought help from a school counselor. So here's the quick story. There's a wild story developing in Kentucky pitting a conservative Christian family against a public school district. It's not yet resolved, but because it's blowing up, I figured it was important to get the story out here. Earlier this month, a father named Brad Briscoe stood up in front of the congregation at Ballard Baptist Church to tell them the disturbing story of how a high school guidance counselor attempted to separate him and his wife from their daughter. I'm not going to read the entire article. Please feel free to check it out. But some of the accusations are that the student was texting back and forth with the counselor, and that the counselor suggested that they should develop a plan B, to develop a false child protective services order, basically, and suggested that she might want to consider emancipating herself from her parents. Now, that may be really good advice, and it may be advice that's not at all wrong, but without knowing all the details, one of the things that I've tried to do over the years, we take calls from anybody, and I don't know how old some people are. Over the years, I've had some clearly younger people call in. And what I've always tried to make sure we do, both when I was working with Atheist Experience and over here, is make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position where we are going head to head in conflict with somebody's parents, which is why when kids would call in and say, my parents make me go to church, my answer to them was go and take lots of notes and get ready to ask lots of questions, and maybe they'll stop making you go, or maybe you'll get a better understanding, but go. If you're not in a position to emancipate yourself and take over your life, then you follow the rules of the place you're in. And, it's not the end of the world to have to do that. I know it sucks. Similarly, there are occasions where we worked with organizations and individuals to help rescue kids who had been kicked out of their parents' house for being atheists, things like that. This story continues. There were a couple hundred tests, but Briscoe in his testimony explained that his daughter, who was 16, asked if a 17-year-old female friend could stay with the family because she was having problems at home. And that wasn't unusual, so they went ahead and agreed to it. 6 months later, the dad found out that the two girls had more than a friendship. There was a romantic involvement, he explained. And their daughter denied it at first, basically telling them, I'm not gay, but then later admitted to being in a relationship with her friend. As teenagers, it's incredibly difficult, especially when you know that your parents aren't the type to be understanding, to potentially come out and talk about all kinds of things. I didn't have to do that, but I have friends who did, and I have family members who did, and I've watched it. But I had other things that I was not too keen to talk to my parents about, and it's incredibly difficult. And counselors are often, especially in schools, are put in a difficult position where their job is to help the kid, and sometimes there's going to be a disagreement about what counts as abuse, what counts as overbearing parents, what counts as parental freedoms. But parents don't own their children. They are stewards that are there to protect and guide kids towards being productive, self-sufficient adults, if at all possible. And so there are some concerns. And even Himmet notes that. He says, there's a fair argument to be made that some of those text messages were unprofessional. Some of the statements may have been sarcastic as opposed to literal. That doesn't mean, however, that the counselor was trying to pursue an agenda. If she had reason to believe the student was in danger at home because of her sexual orientation or gender, then she had a legal obligation to help get the student safe, and that could mean not disclosing that information to the parent. The other thing to remember, kids lie. They're going to lie to their parents, and they may also lie to their friends, and they may also lie to their counselors because you're terrified of what could potentially happen. And so you've got parents who are operating on perhaps limited information because kids don't want to tell them what's going on in their life. Who the hell does? I never really understood the people whose parents were their best friend and openly shared everything with them. That always felt a little bit weird to me, but maybe they're better off. Maybe they did better than I ever would. But also you had potentially counselors who were only operating on one side of the information, getting it from the student and not actually interacting with the parent. And it may be difficult for them to even begin to interact with the parent. There are laws designed to protect kids from exposure, and there are laws designed to require exposing certain things. It is dealing with people with children is an incredibly difficult process, and so I've always tried to make sure that we're giving responsible guidance here. And so yeah, somebody said I can't have kids, but I'm an expert. Thanks. Yeah, not remotely claiming to be an expert, but I was a kid, so I have at least some experience. I also have a niece and nephew, and have interacted over the years with countless kids. But yeah, I'm not an expert on that or pretty much anything else. So there we go. We have callers waiting, and as always, I said theists are going to get priority, so we're going to start there. We've been trying to make some adjustments to the audio. I'm going to make judicious use of the hold button. So for all the callers who are in there listening right now, I'm going to bring you on. You'll hear a beep when you come on live. We'll do the introductions, figure out what we're going to talk about. But please be ready to pause. Don't try to talk too fast. Please be ready to pause, because there's a really good chance that I'm going to interrupt, if for no other reason than to get clarification. Either I didn't hear or understand that, or there's a misrepresentation that's going to lead us down a path that isn't going to be particularly productive. I genuinely just want to have cool, fun conversations tonight. I'm happy to answer questions. But if we're going to get into contentious things, or, hey, you're going to explain what you believe and why, just be ready to pause. And when I ask a question, just tell me what the answer is. As long as you're being honest, hell, you could be the only caller for the entire show if you're really, really good at it. But let's get started. Art in Pennsylvania is a theist friend of him. Welcome to the show, Art. You want to tell me what you believe and why? So I'm all ears.
Yes, Matt. Do you have a co-host, and what's the co-host's name?
I don't have I'm flying solo. You're stuck with just me.
Okay. Well, I believe that the ultimate ground of existence is God.
Okay.
And one way to unpack that is, what do I mean by ultimate ground of existence? Do I believe it actually exists? Okay, sorry.
No, that was my first question, is what do you mean by ultimate ground of existence?
Okay. Well, you have a table. The table's existence is grounded in the wood. If you disassemble the table, the wood continues to exist. The wood's existence is grounded in the molecules, which are grounded in the atoms, which are grounded in the protons, neutrons, which we get down to the 17 entities of the standard model. And as far as we know now, there are excitations in a quantum field. That's as far as we can go now. I believe, so based on that, I think that I'm kind of stipulating that there's an ultimate ground, because what I've just mentioned doesn't include space-time, right? Those are two incompatible theories. But the direction of science is looking for the one. It's going down, it's reducing multiplicity to less. It hasn't gotten to the one yet, but I mean, there's millions of things on the Earth. I once read there's 10,000 chemical compounds. That reduces to 100 plus atoms, and we go down, 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 and the number gets smaller and smaller. So I'm saying that there is an ultimate ground of existence upon which all existence is based. Does that make sense?
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I don't. So if let's say right now the various features of the subatomic natural world are as far as we can currently explore,
right?
What reason do we have to think there is a foundation, or that there's anything beneath that? And what's this God you're talking about, and why should we consider it to be the foundation?
Okay. Well, first of all, as far as why I consider there is a foundation, is, as I say, because that's the direction science is going. It's reducing, millions of individual items down to a manifestation of 17 quantum fields in space-time. So that's quite a reduction. You've gotten down to 19 or 18, because space-time is one thing. So
what?
I'm saying I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know. So you're saying that if we took like all the different things in the universe, that's a really big number, and we gradually get down until we've got these 17 subatomic things, and you think that the trend leads towards a one, but you thinking that the trend leads towards a one isn't a demonstration that it does lead towards the one. So what's the demonstration that there is a one?
Well, as I say, I'm telling you what I believe. If I could prove there was a one, I mean, I'd have a Nobel Prize, I guess. I mean, I can't prove
so
there is a one.
you see a pattern.
It's what I believe.
You see a pattern, and rather than saying, "Hey, I can't explore beyond this point," you're just going to go ahead and infer that it continues and it continues to a point. How do you know what the features are of that point, and how do you know that that comports with whatever God it is? Or are you saying that whatever those features are, that's what you would call God, or is there some actual God, like an agent that you ascribe to that you say is the one, or both?
Let me try an analogy, then I'll answer those questions. In a dream, you could imagine a tree, a person. You could imagine yourself when you were 25 years old. All of those entities, the ultimate ground of all of those entities is your thought or your mind stuff, is creating all of those things in the dream. And vaguely, I'm saying that the universe is something like that. That there is, let's put it colloquially, that the universe is a dream in the mind of God. So everything is a manifestation of the mind stuff or the thought or whatever you want to call it. That's kind of an analogy. It's not too bad, but of course it's not perfect.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that that analogy might help people begin to see what you're talking about. But analogies aren't arguments or evidence. That they're certainly helpful in understanding it. But I'm saying you've already acknowledged that right now we can't go beyond those 17 subatomic. What if we find that those 17 lead to, I don't know, one other thing that's not a God or doesn't qualify as God? I mean, did you begin with some definition of a God and say, aha, this could serve as the foundation? Or did you reductively get back to a trend where you think there's going to be a one, and then do you just call it God? What are the properties of this God?
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, if we accept this idea tentatively that there's an ultimate ground of existence, then we live and move and have our being in that. We are made in its image, if you take image kind of as an analogy. And one of the things that put me onto this, I was reading various mystics, and some mystics have an experience of Jesus, and there's a guy, they see a guy with a hole in his hands and all that. But a lot of them have an experience, like, for instance, one said, God is subsistent being itself. I think that was Aquinas, but I'm not certain. But that's the idea. Someone has this, what they call a mystical experience, an experience of the real, and they say God is subsistent being itself. And that's what, I should say, most people think of God as personal and transcending the universe. That's the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, personal, who art in heaven, not on earth. This view is kind of diametrically opposed. It says God is impersonal and God is immanent in the universe. The universe is a manifestation of this God. This is similar to the Hindu non-dual Vedanta philosophy. Not identical, but that's kind of if anybody knows that, it's kind of in that direction.
So I'm not sure that you actually answered the question I'm asking, but you literally said you literally said one thing that is absolutely false. You said, if we accept this idea, then we live and move and have our being within it. But that's not true.
Yeah.
You live and move and have your being within it if it's true. That's independent of whether or not you actually accept it. So when you said, if we accept it, then we live and move in this, that's just false. Either we live and move and have our being within this, or we don't, whether we accept it or not. But what I was asking is, are you advocating for a personal agent God, or is your God a metaphor for whatever the grounding is?
I would say neither. First of all, a personal agent God is, I think, what people I don't want to be condescending, but I think it's an immature idea of God. It's an idea you can teach to a 5-year-old. There's mommy and daddy, and above them is a super mommy and daddy. It's good for 5-year-olds and a lot of people who are older. And I think it has some political implications, which is why it's so popular, but that's another story. But I'm talking about, well, I have to get back to that. And well, first of all, let me just say this, and then you said I didn't answer your question, so please tell me the question again. But in my analogy, if this is all a dream in the mind of God, then if it is true that this is all a dream in the mind of God, and if it is true that an ultimate ground of existence exists, if those things are true, then we could justly say we live and move and have our being in it.
Well,
right?
Yes, that's a tautology.
Right.
That's you can throw out as many tautologies as you want. If it's true that we're living in a dream, then we're in a dream.
Right.
Of course, that's true. The thing is, you're saying you believe that there's a foundation, a grounding for existence, and that grounding is God. And yet I'm still not sure if obviously you're saying it's not a personal agent. So what characteristics or qualities does this God thing that you're advocating for have?
Well, it has the characteristic of being the foundation of everything, of being the all and the one.
Okay, so no. So now what you're saying, this is the uselessness of deistic propositions, but in this case, you just seem fond of tautologies, because now you say, I'm inferring that there is a ground to reality, and I believe that that grounding is God, and God is that being which has the property of being the ground of reality. Well, congratulations on your entirely circular definition, which is completely useless, doesn't tell us a thing, and makes the God label irrelevant, because all you had to do was say, I believe there's a grounding to reality, which you can't demonstrate, and you don't have to name it. But when you take the name, the label that has been used throughout history to point to things with agency that are the creators of existence and sustainers of existence, you are now leveraging something in order to lie, because you don't believe in any of the types of God you don't believe in the God of classical theism, none of this stuff. You believe in an idea and want to deify it without any justification, either that deification is warranted or that the idea is sound. What purpose does any of this serve?
Okay, well, could I, what purpose? Could I get back to address what you just said, or do I have to answer that? I mean, I will answer it, but I do want to make the point.
Either one, because I'm finding this to be a monumental waste of time. Do you know what it's like to have somebody say, hey, I believe there's something that I can't demonstrate, and I'm going to call it God, even though what I'm calling God is completely different from what normatively gets used as God in any other conversation around the world.
That's exactly what I want to address. I believe that God is a subjective term. Now, what I mean by that is that if you're a Christian, Jesus is God. If you get converted to Islam, Jesus ceases to be God. Vice versa, if you're a Muslim, Jesus is not God. You get converted, Jesus is God. People have considered Thor God. They've considered Zeus God. So I think God is a label we apply to something that we consider ultimate, something that we consider supreme. And I'm applying this to what I consider ultimate and supreme. Now, the fact that most people have had this idea of God as a super daddy or a super mommy is fine, but that doesn't fix that as the only meaning. And as I said, this does have some similarities with non-dual Vedanta. So there are, there's probably, that's a Hindu philosophy. You know what I'm saying? There's probably millions of people in the world who accept this idea of God. So I don't think you should limit the idea of God to a personal agent, because that's naive. I shouldn't say naive, but
I'm not limiting it. I'm asking you, what the fuck is the use of this? You're saying you believe there's a foundation which you can't demonstrate, and you're going to call that foundation God without any warrant for why you're using that label. Well,
my warrant, okay, no, there's two things. I'll address use first, I guess. We've already talked a bit about warrant use. Now, this is going to be a little speculative, but if you have a God who is a person outside of creation, and he has angels below him, and then he has common people in heaven, that implies, it suggests a political order where you have a king who mirrors the relationship. And you'll notice that Prince Charles, when he was made king by the Archbishop of Canterbury, whoever. This is an old idea of God rules in heaven. He has angels, then he has common people, and on earth, God gives authority to the king, and the king has his, knights or whatever, and princes, and then there's the common people. Now, if you believe...
Are you just discovering that?
I'm sorry?
Are you just discovering this? Because I feel like I'm getting a lecture that literally nobody needs.
I was trying to answer your question of use. I'm saying if you believe that God is immanent, that suggests democracy. That suggests that at the fundamental level, we're all equal. And that suggests that people can go in and find God without the agency of a pastor. And especially in the Roman Catholic...
I don't need a metaphorical God to have the idea that people to support democracy, or the idea that people have value or are equal. I don't need a God for that.
I'm not saying you do, but I'm saying that you were asking a practical consequence of these ideas, and
if
I was giving you some possible...
It's clearly not practical, right?
Huh?
If I don't need it, it's clearly not practical. If I can open my envelopes without a letter opener, then I don't need the letter opener.
Well, I was trying to give you some possible consequences, and
I'm not looking. I'm never, ever looking for practical arguments about concepts. This is the bullshit that Ayaan Hirsi Ali fell for when she's no longer an atheist, because atheist doesn't give her enough meaning and purpose and isn't going to combat Islam. So she's now a Christian, despite not saying anything about being convinced that a God exists or that Jesus is her savior or anything like that. It's all about the utility of this. You seem to be incredibly enamored with a metaphorical God because you see some usefulness in it to explain in something that you can't demonstrate as even real. But you like the idea of democracy and people being equal, so you're going to appeal to a God that's not authoritarian. How does that help us in any way address whether or not there is a God, whether or not the gods that actually fucking matter to people are real? Nothing you've said is of any use to me at all.
Well, you asked, I called up to tell you what I believe and why. You don't accept what I believe and why. I didn't expect you would. I didn't expect you were going to say, like convert or whatever. But this is what I believe. I have some basis for it. I think that thinking of God as a person is it's childish. And I think it's childish.
I think it's childish. I think it's childish. I think it's childish and ridiculous to dismiss the history of religious thoughts about God and say, nope, God's just a metaphor for something that I think exists but can't prove. I think that's pretty fucking childish. You have a useless proposition. You have something that you can't demonstrate is true, that has no value if you could demonstrate that it was true, because at the end of the day, it can't be true. At the end of the day, if you prove that the universe has a foundation, then whatever that foundation is exists, and it wouldn't necessarily be anything that anyone should consider a god. Well, it is a useless god. It is a useless God that doesn't impact our lives in one little bit. How does knowing that the universe has a metaphorical grounding impact my life in the slightest?
Well, first of all, in my view, it's not metaphorical, it's real. And
bullshit.
Secondly, how it impacts I'm sorry.
Bullshit. You gave nothing but analogies. What is real about the thing that you can't prove?
I can't disprove hard solipsism either. I mean,
Excuse me,
consider
sir. Excuse me, Art. Excuse me,
what?
but I asked about something that you can't prove, and your answer was to say, I can't disprove something else. Nobody asked you about what you can or can't disprove. What you just did was do a fallacious switching of the burden of proof to pretend that your useless proposition is on the same footing of other things that can't be disproven. Well, congratulations for your unfalsifiable, useless proposition.
Well, I think we've probably, I don't know, let's see, is there anything I can say more? I mean, I think I've made my points, you've made your points. I don't want to keep repeating things. Just give me a second here. Is there anything I didn't say, or is there anything you want to say more? Because I don't want to keep going over this. I mean, I consider this real. And
okay, whether or not you consider it real is irrelevant. Whether or not you can demonstrate that it's real is the only thing that is relevant. And even if you were to demonstrate that the universe actually has some grounding, that doesn't mean that anybody on the planet or in the entire galaxy should consider that grounding God. And calling it God doesn't add anything to it. If we're talking about the grounding, why not just call it the grounding? So A, you cannot demonstrate that it's real, and yet you're sitting here saying you think it's real. Well, that makes you irrational because you're convinced that something's real that you cannot demonstrate is real, and you are trying to call it God. If there was no religious concept of God, you would not be calling it God. You would just be calling it the grounding of the universe. It is a cowardly dodge to relabel the foundation of the universe as God to avoid having to acknowledge that you don't believe in a God.
okay, can I respond to those 2 points?
Sure.
Number one, okay, thank you. Number one, the reason I mentioned hard solipsism is you said, I can't prove that this is real. That is true. I can't prove that you are real. But
sure you can.
That's what hard
sure
solipsism is. I mean,
no.
You've acknowledged that on other shows
not
that
being,
it can't
no,
be disproven,
no,
right?
sir, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir, no, sir.
Okay.
We
Go ahead.
cannot disprove hard solipsism, but we operate under a particular framework. To the extent that we can identify what is or isn't real, yes, you could say we can't prove anything is real, but let's be honest and not dishonest as you're being. There's a category of things that are real, provided our assumption that hard solipsism is not true. Your thing does not fit in that, just as fairy dust farting unicorns don't fit into that. Let's not pretend that the glasses I'm wearing is less able to be identified as real than a universe farting pixie. There's 2 different categories. There's, since we can't disprove hard solipsism, we still operate as if there's a reality here. And for you to pretend that that my real existence is as questionable as your non-demonstrable grounding of reality is patently absurd. And to dodge it by suggesting that we can't solve hard solipsism makes you unworthy of discussion. So what's your next one?
All right. My next point was that I have defined, or I believe that the word God is used to describe what people consider supreme and worthy of veneration. And if I choose to consider this worthy of veneration, someone else could say, Art, I believe the ultimate ground of existence exists, and I think it's crap. That's fine. They would not consider it God. Someone else could say, Art, I believe it exists, but I consider Jesus to be God. I consider Krishna to be God. So I think God is a subjective term that people apply to what they consider ultimate. I consider this ultimate, so I think that my calling it God, I think, is fully justified. And as I said before, I think the idea of a man in the sky God, I know that's been the normative use of the word, but that's, I think, just because people, they needed something to tell their kids, and also I got into the politics where, because I think that supports a political structure, I think that's why the state supports. I mean, in some countries, the state tax monies go to support an official church. The state supports the church, and the church supports the state, at least it did for centuries, by crowning kings as God. The Catholic Church had the divine right of kings. So I think there's two reasons why the idea of a personal God, of a God who's a person, has persisted. But I don't think we should be limited to that idea. I think that I think that God is a word that people apply to what they consider the ultimate, and I think that my use of it is valid. Now, you might say the ultimate ground of a being doesn't exist, it's a useless concept, fine. But if I believe that, I believe I'm justified in applying the word God to that. And as I mentioned, if some of the mystics, so like God is subsistent being itself, this is someone who claims to have had an experience of God, and that's how they describe God. Sorry, go ahead.
I gave you plenty of time. I gave you plenty of time. I'm now bored to tears. I'm happy that you think you found something that gives you a smug sense of superiority over everybody else. But I'm here to figure out whether or not there is an actual God and whether or not it's warranted. Yours isn't warranted any more than the theist that you want to denounce as inferior. So enjoy.
Okay.
Bye.
Well, anyway.
No, anyway, nothing. Look, if your idea of God is something that you can't demonstrate, then calling in to tell me what you believe and why is useless. You could just say, I believe there's a God and I think its properties are this. I have no way of demonstrating that to any of you, but I think my God's superior. And since I'm just going to say God is a subjective term that means different things to anybody else, then I'm just as warranted as anybody else. Well, what you mean is you are just as unwarranted in your belief as anybody else, because like others, you have now offered up an absolutely useless proposition that you cannot demonstrate as true. And in Art's case, it's even more useless because it's just a tautology. It's like the people who say, I believe that God is the universe. Well, the universe already has a label, and that label is the universe. It doesn't make any sense it doesn't add anything to put the God label on the universe. It also doesn't add anything to put the God label on ultimate grounding. But the big difference between the people who think God is the universe and Art is at least the universe can be demonstrated to actually fucking exist. Art is so enamored with feeling smugly superior to all the people who think there's a sky daddy, but he doesn't want to just say, oh, it's got to be the universe. It's got to be some grounding. Let me find something that we can't demonstrate, an unfalsifiable, untestable proposition. And then because it's ultimate, I'm going to call it God. Well, whatever the grounding of the universe is, if it's not a thinking agent, I'm superior to it. Because I can act of volition. Maybe there's no free will, but I can at least act of volition, and I can at least comprehend. That which can comprehend and evaluate would have to be like, am I more ultimate than a rock? The fact that something serves as a foundation for something doesn't mean it's in any way superior or ultimate. My house sits on a foundation. It's concrete. It's fucking useless in Texas without the air conditioner. The air conditioner in my house is the ultimate, not the foundation. As long as we're going to go down the path of metaphor. But all right, here we go. We got lots of other callers. And as a reminder, this isn't the only show on the Line Network. There's a lot of things coming up, including new merchandise, new branding stuff, and in April, we'll be having LineCon here in Austin in coordination with a total solar eclipse. But tomorrow is the Transatlantic Call-In Show, and instead of airing at 2 p.m. Central, it's going to air at 4 p.m. Central. Basically, just about 3 hours ago is when you should be tuning in tomorrow for Arden Hart and Dr. Ben. Sunday's show is going to be Jimmy and probably me, assuming I get back from a reptile convention on time. Monday, Skeptalk will be Forrest Valkai and Gordon Walker. Tuesday's Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock. And next Wednesday, I'll be back for the Hang Up. Probably. There is a chance that I will postpone or alter next week's Hang Up, but we'll try and announce that at least a day ahead of time. Not just saying, hey, that's the way it goes. All right. We have 4 atheist callers. I have not even looked at what's on this, and that's no disrespect to our call screener, who I'm sure is hot buttered awesome. Okay. And yeah, I'm going to start off with, is it Tomo in Croatia that would like to ask me a question? So welcome. Is it Tomo or am I pronouncing that wrong?
Tomo, yes.
Hi, welcome.
Awesome. Is the audio okay?
I hear you great. I hear you better than some of the people here in the United States. So.
Oh, awesome. All right. I'm on a PC, so probably good mic and stuff. All right. So I'm not sure if the call screener explained the question. Hope it's an okay question.
So go ahead, ask it.
I was wondering. Yeah. I was wondering. I remember in a video, I think on the YouTube channel, where you mentioned that skepticism isn't an epistemology, and that caught my ear because I always thought of it as such, and I couldn't find another video where there's an explanation. So I was just wondering if that's an okay topic to tackle a bit. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think it's because I'm pretty particular about how I define and describe things. So an epistemology, or not an epistemology, just epistemology, is the study of how we know what we know. An epistemology is a proposed structure to achieve reliable knowledge. And skepticism is an ideology seeking to form an epistemology. It is basically like modern scientific skepticism makes use of the principles of science and science as an epistemology or a method of knowing. But skepticism itself is an ideal of, basically, I used to sum it up as, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And so skepticism will adapt to whatever epistemologies and whatever methods are demonstrably most reliable. But skepticism itself isn't a methodology, which is why I say it's not epistemology.
Oh, okay. That totally makes sense. That just clicked. It was so simple. Yeah. So it's if I can reiterate just so I'm sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So it's like skepticism is just like an idea framework, but not an actual as you said, like I'm lost for words. I'm difficult speaking in English, so my words are flying all around.
English is about the only thing I can even understand. So anybody who's multilingual is already massively impressive, especially if you can have conversations about, deep philosophical subjects. But yeah, it's a very particular thing where, for me, when I'm talking about skepticism, it's an ideology that seeks the best epistemologies. And modern scientific skepticism makes use of science primarily. And I'm fine with, actually, I've said it before, I'm fine with scientism as long as it's not an assertion it's the only way to know. It's just the most reliable way to know.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. Like, would scientism fall into, or something that usually gets described as scientism? Because I also, too, don't seem to have a problem with it, as long, like you said, as long as it isn't used in like a nefarious, dumb way. But just like acknowledging that science works and that it's great, and because it works, it shouldn't be a problem. And
I think in much the same way that we have like weak atheism and strong atheism, where weak atheism is I do not believe in a god, and strong atheism is I believe there are no gods. I think you can have something like weak scientism and strong scientism, where weak scientism is the acknowledgement that the scientific methods are the single most consistently reliable methods to accurate understandings of the universe. And then strong scientism would be science is the only way to know. And I reject the strong scientism idea, but I would go with the weak scientism idea that until somebody demonstrates a better way to have an accurate model of the world, science wins. And they would have to at least use science to begin showing that they had a better model.
Yes. So that puts any alternative idea already on sort of a back foot.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you for taking my call. Huge fan. Love the line. Thank you. And yep, take care.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tomo. All right. Oh, this is where there's the space between calls and everything else, where I would normally engage with my co-host. So, Matt, what did you think about that last call? Well, thank you for finally shutting up long enough to let me talk. It's incredibly difficult trying to be a co-host with. Hang on a minute. I just want to ask what you thought about the last call. You don't need to lecture me on the rest of it. Yes, I appreciate that. I like the fact that that Tomo called in about that, because it gives you the opportunity to clarify something that has confused many people. Sweet. All right, that's the last of the multiple personality version of this show. But we got more callers calling in, and I want to make sure I get to these people who've been on hold for a while. So John in New York is an atheist, and pronouns are he, him, has been waiting on the line for quite a while. So thanks for calling, John. You had a question or a comment about something of mine.
Yeah, and actually I was just about to go. You got me just in the nick of time. A pleasure, and thank you for taking the call. I will try and pause, just so you know. But this is great, actually, just talking to you. I really like the way you think.
Well, I'll try not to screw that up.
Don't worry about it. Anyway, I remember once hearing you speak about Alcoholics Anonymous and how you did not like it as a program. Is that something you would like to talk about, or is that just like, because it's too weird? So I figured I would put it out there before we continue.
No, I'm happy to talk about what my thoughts are on Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a couple simple things I can say, but it's a little bit more complex than that. But what's your take?
Okay, well, I actually, when I first heard you say that, I was in AA, and it was working for me as an atheist, even though I did have to do a lot of mental gymnastics, clearly, because, it's the whole higher power thing. You had said something to the effect, you're just like, it's not the best thing in the world. And I was like, hey, it's working for me. And then I actually tried to start my own very secular kind of catering to atheists group of my own. And there were a couple of people that, well, just about everybody else that I knew were religious. And over time, it seemed they were just trying to wear it down, to dilute the whole thing. Like what brought me into an AA meeting in the first place. And I went to a couple in-person ones, but I basically a Zoom guy. And it was just like, okay, it's secular and you don't necessarily need to have God. And then the first guy that I actually saw speak was an atheist, and God, the guy was absolutely brilliant. So I was convinced. I was like, if this guy can make it work, I can make it work. And then when I tried to start doing my own thing, I was like, okay, there's no God in the group. And it says, in the introduction on the website for the Zoom meetings, I was like, sobriety can be found without God. And one person in particular took offense to that. And I thought I had navigated it, but it turns out people, including my sponsor, that I thought had my back, totally stabbed me in the back, and in a meeting tried to change the laws so that that would be taken out of the description, thereby removing what enticed me into the rooms that got me sober to begin with. And I was like, this is some self-defeating crap. And it was just like a real stab in the back. And one person who actually claimed to be an atheist, obviously just hated God, was like, I got your back. And then the vote came, and he decided with the people who were like, oh, we don't need to have you can be sober without God in it. And I was just done. So that was 6 months ago. I'm still sober, and my life is going even better because now I'm not involved with all of this dealing with people and trying to set up a room, and it can be a drag. And I'll stop now. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, sure. It doesn't surprise me that you ran into some difficulties. I've never been in AA.
Okay.
There's a number of reasons that I have issues with it. One of them is that Alcoholics Anonymous don't publish their recidivism rates. Their basic format is, if you ever start drinking again, you failed the program didn't fail you. And I also have issues with the notion that even for the ones that are like, oh yes, it doesn't have to be God related, but there needs to be a higher power. I think that saying you're powerless basically sets it up so that you replace one addiction with another. So you go from whatever your substance addiction is to then being addicted to the program. And
Yes.
I by the way, I have zero expertise here. I'm not remotely saying, oh, that doesn't work or that shouldn't work or anything else. It just feels to me that programs like Secular Sobriety and others work more towards empowering people and addressing the issues, psychological and otherwise, that lead to substance abuse and cause problems, and try to empower individuals to be able to say, you know what, I'm not helpless. I need help, but it's not that I'm not able to do this I'm not able to do this at all, but we all benefit from help. And I think that we know that they've been dishonest, AA specifically, about their recidivism rates because of how they managed to say, oh, if you fall off the wagon or whatever, you didn't work the program didn't fail you, you failed the program. I worry about that, but I have zero expertise. And the one thing I've consistently said, even every time I ripped into, and I had more data and ripped into Alcoholics Anonymous, was this: if Alcoholics Anonymous is working for you and keeping you sober, keep going. I have no problem at all with someone, like, I don't care if it's a placebo, if it's Dumbo's magic feather, if that's what it takes, as long as you're not hurting somebody else or whatever else, if that's what it takes to keep you in a better life, go for it. I would prefer that we relied on better approaches where the science is more supportive, where the data is more open. And that's why I'm supporting organizations like Secular Sobriety. So
Understood. Yeah, there's a whole problematic thing behind it. And also, I mean, I could go on. I'm sure we've already got an hour in, and I've got something to do at 4 a.m. because I work very peculiar hours. So I really appreciate your time. Can I just say one last thing, though?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Just thank you. For people who are interested in joining and stuff like that, it does work if you let it. I'm not trying to take a hit on or anything like that. Just as an atheist, you're going to find some people who, even because they believe in God, think that their higher power is better than yours, and that can be discouraging. But if just me as a general statement, and being very, very serious and argumentative atheist at times, it worked for me. So if someone's out there and needs to drink, you might want to give it a try, because, that's the Dumbo's feather, if it needs be. And if it works, then you can fly,
Yep.
So thank you very much for the time.
Right. Thanks, John. All right. We've got a handful of callers. We've got a theist caller I'm going to get to in just a second. So hang on, Kevin. But I've got Gabe in Texas, is an atheist, who has a question about talking to parents about atheism. So welcome, Gabe.
Oh, nice to meet you, Master Dillahunty. I have two medical doctors, parents. They're conservative Catholics. And, I called before and talked hidden, but I wanted your opinion about it, how I could speak to my parents about being an atheist, because they agreed with me, and they reverted back to, I guess, being Catholic. Because I had them read, like, for example, Carl Sagan's science, what is it called? The Demon Haunted World. Science is a candle in the dark.
Yeah.
And my mom read it, but when I discussed it with her, how the Bible supports slavery and everything, she didn't like what I was talking to her about. She basically reverted back. She was like, "Oh, well, Carl Sagan." At the beginning she was like, she agreed with Carl Sagan, but after that she was like, "No, now I hate the book."
Okay, Gabe, just move the mic or your phone just a little bit away, because you're kind of overdriving the mic just a little bit. Let me ask you a couple questions. So your parents, you said both of them are doctors, they're Catholics. Are you still financially dependent with them and living with them, or is this just conversations between adults?
No, I'm independent.
Okay. So you had conversations with your mom, and she found problems with the Bible and doesn't like the Bible?
No, I confronted her about, Catholicism because she tries to like, well, all my life she's tried to shove it down my throat. So, I started responding back to her. Thanks for your show. Thank you, by the way. I started responding to her in a way that that makes her think about her beliefs.
Yeah. Well, all right, Gabe, I guess what I need to know, Gabe, is what's your goal? Because it sounds like you're already talking to your mom about your beliefs, and it's not your job to fix her. And so what do you hope comes out of this?
Maybe more respectful conversations because the last conversation went really bad. She tried to tell me that there was an exorcism in her house, and this cult basically came over here to pray, quote unquote, pray for me.
There was an exorcism in her house.
Yes, that's what she said. There's an like, when I was having problems with her, she got brought some people to pray. There was a cult that came to pray for her, and
Gabe, I'm sorry.
confronted her about it.
Gabe, I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time understanding you. Your audio is clipping really bad. So you either got to move the mic or the phone much further away from your mouth because you're overdriving it. And I'm just not able to hear what you say. So there was an exorcism in your mom's house. No, that's worse.
Okay, how about yes?
That's a little better. So you're saying there was an exorcism in your mom's house. What happened, and how does she know that they did anything?
Okay, well, supposedly that she heard a noise in the kitchen, that it was weird, and she says that was the devil. But then I confronted her about it. I asked her, just like the way I've seen you confront other atheists, how did you know it was the devil, or how did you know it was not an alien? And then I also asked her, how did you know it was a devil from Christianity and not a devil from Hinduism or a devil from any other religion? But after that, she shut down the conversation. She was like, I don't want to know. I don't care. And so, you believe what you believe. That's why, that's the way
your mom
life is.
Your mom's a medical doctor who heard a strange noise in the kitchen and determined that was a demon, and so then had called somebody to come do an exorcism.
Yes.
Who came in to do the exorcism?
It's a cult in our local Catholic church. They supposedly prayed for the house, and they heard that strange noise, and that's
that's not an exorcism. And generally speaking, the Catholic Church no longer does them or doesn't talk about them. Having someone come and pray and bless the house, it almost sounds like there are Catholic psychic palm readers around town that will come and do blessings on your house. But in any case, I don't know what else to tell you, because if the goal is just to have better conversations, you're only going to get the conversations that your mom or your dad are willing to have. And at some point, you're either going to have to say, okay, let's not have these conversations, or you're going to have to like train them so that when they bring up and try to shove Catholicism, in your face, you can say, hey, look, I was happy not having any discussion about this, but if you want to discuss it, let's discuss it. And then I'm going to bet that they're going to say, no, let's not. It should be, you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe. We can either discuss it as two grown adults on equal footing, or we're not going to discuss it at all. And you're just going to have to set boundaries. It's difficult to set boundaries with your mom. I had massive arguments with my mom about religion and politics, and I was never going to set a boundary, because I will always talk to my mom. But my dad decided to set a boundary, and he forbid my mom to have any conversations with me about religion at all. And I pointed out that if I didn't already despise his religion, the fact that he can forbid my mom to talk to me about anything would make me despise it. But I don't have any better advice for you than what you're doing, Gabe, other than, maybe, no, I'm not going to suggest that. I think of some funny stuff on occasion. Like, if you just carried around a cross and every time your mom started talking about religion, you just held up the cross at her like she was a vampire, that might make her aware of when she's doing it. But really, it's just, love your mom, try to help, and have the conversations that she's willing to have. And you're going to have to set boundaries.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Well,
If I could fix this for you, Gabe, I would, but I can't fix it for me or anybody else either. So that's the best I've come up with. But
okay. Could I just say one more last thing?
sure.
There's a particular episode that I have you with Jeff D downloaded on my phone, or actually in my car, and I play it all the time. And actually, I really, really appreciate that episode because that to me, it was the best episode that you have debating a Christian. Denise from Portland. I don't know if you remember. This is way, really, really old. But I just barely found out about the atheist experience like not 3 years ago. So, but I really, really appreciate that episode. That really, really helped me a lot.
I don't know exactly which one. I don't know exactly which one it is, but I'm glad there's an episode that you liked. Maybe there'll be better episodes here that you'll like even more.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks, Gabe. All right. I am going on my phone now, which I hear is rude to do in the middle of the show to say, hey, I'm going to get on my phone. But it's way too hot in here right now. And fortunately, from my home, I can control the thermostat in the entire house. Remember when I told you how critical it was to have a good air conditioner? It's especially critical not only in Texas where the weather fluctuates, but also when you have as many animals that require heat as we do, as well as computers and lights for a set. Despite the fact that these are LEDs, it just, without airflow, it just gets really unbearably warm up here sometimes. So, honey, if you were getting too hot, it's about to get cooler. She's probably freezing.
Oh, no, it's hot in here. Very, very hot. Also,
you can take off all your clothes because you're not on the air.
I wanted to let you know that there was a poll on who was the better host today, either Matt or Matt. And it looks like Matt won with 56%. So congratulations to Matt.
All right. Congratulations, Matt. Thank you. I hope you've learned something from this. Thank you, by the way, all of you out there who supported me. See, and I promised no more of that. And now we've had to do it. All right. Calling in from Costa Rica is Raven, who has questions about abortion, Gaza, and other points I've made. Let's make this easy, Raven. I've already talked about Gaza tonight. Let's just ask me an issue about abortion, and we'll move on to other callers after that.
Hey, sure. Well, first, thank you for both Matts to having me here. The secondary Matt was interesting co-host. You know that I must say that the second Matt
like him.
was very interesting.
I like him.
Yeah, I like him too. Anyhow, just in matters of abortions, that was one quick question. How familiar are you with the human rights instruments and the application and ratification of them throughout, this continent, America? Knowing
human rights instruments?
Yeah. Starting from the Declaration of Human Rights.
Oh, you're talking about like the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations and stuff?
Yeah. How familiar are you with them?
I've read them and I've talked about them, but I mean, I don't have them memorized or anything.
Okay, that's fine. There's a particular case which I will recommend you to give a thorough read. It happened here in my country, in Costa Rica. It's called the Artavia and others versus Costa Rica case that was presented towards the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. I don't know if you're familiar what the Inter-American Court of Human Rights is.
Nope.
Okay, so America, as the continent from Argentina to the United States and the Caribbean, we after the Declaration of Human Rights, we actually established the American Convention on Human Rights, which are the main basis to which the human rights are applied here. However, the United States has not ratified it. Just by saying all this, this particular case was in regards of Costa Rica made IVF practice illegal for about 12, 13 years. A whole series of couples who wanted to use IVF because they wanted to get pregnant and have kids and have a family, burned the whole process internally in the country against that provision. So once they did that, they took that case to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. It took about 2-3 years of deliberations, of analysis, etc. The Inter-American Court of Human Rights came back and said the provision on IVF, or in vitro fertilization, is a violation of fundamental human rights, particularly those that refer to self-determination, which include bodily autonomy. Then it also entered into the debate of when does life start from the basis of human rights. I recommend you that read. It's extremely thorough because it basically just says, nope, conception, the idea of life starts at conception is erroneous from a human rights standpoint, because you cannot uniquely and exclusively give credit to that belief over other perceptions of how life can start. And in order to protect fundamental self-determination rights, which include a whole series of them, of women, abortion must never be legal. And from that point on, well, things have started slowly moving in Latin America. But I recommend that read to you.
Raven?
Sorry.
You're saying they concluded abortion should never be legal, or abortion should never be illegal?
Illegal. Should never be illegal.
I appreciate that you're calling in to give all this information, but I don't know. So no offense to Costa Rica or any human rights court, but I don't know what difference this makes.
It actually makes a lot of difference in a more profound conversation, which we could say, United States talks a lot about human rights and civil rights, but one thing is talking about them, and another thing is implementing them, making sure effective tools. Let's be realistic. Your Bill of Rights from the United States, from a constitutional standpoint, they're obsolete in its, not in its essence, but it's in its structure. So we've grown to apply all those civil rights that the United States has, except Article 2. That's another discussion. Or Article 2. Article 2, Amendment 2. You guys call it Amendment 2. We call it Articles. Anyhow. So from that perspective, even though in Latin America, majority of abortion is illegal, we just had recently Mexico, Argentina, Chile, somewhat Colombia, Uruguay, that have changed that in the last 10, 15 years, maybe, and more recent.
Somehow, Raven, somehow I'm missing the point.
Okay, so let me just focus on that point. The major discussion in matters of abortion and implementing the protection of what you guys call bodily autonomy and what we describe as self-determination clearly shows that in the United States, there's a lack of interest of protecting human rights to its own population. And that tells a big ass tale. I know you would agree on this. And
I don't know that I would agree on this. I think so. I don't think it's easy to say that there isn't interest in human rights just because the United States keeps getting one particular human right wrong.
I wouldn't say one. There's sufficient historical evidence of how many human rights have been violated within the borders of the United States to its own people, but that's a profound and different conversation.
Sure, but
admittedly, we can say you're not as worse or as bad as Russia or China.
Oh my God, the fucking audio drives me nuts. Apart from abortion, what other human rights is the United States getting wrong now that we're not addressing?
Well, first of all, the fundamental right of adequate living spaces for many populations, especially vulnerable populations, Native Americans, Afro-Americans, and others. Freedom of press.
I don't understand what you mean.
Okay, so fundamentally, the right of having a house or having an adequate space for living is recognized as one of the fundamental human rights. It is
how is the United States how is the United States denying someone that right?
Let's look at, for example, the experience of Native Americans in the United States, where
are Native Americans, Raven, are Native Americans in the United States denied the right to own homes or rent homes?
In major degree, yes. We see that.
No, Raven. No, that's simply not true. There is no United States law that prohibits Native Americans from having a right to own property or have housing.
So, based on the Census Bureau, this is data about 4 or 5 years ago.
Raven, the Census Bureau takes numbers about what is with regard to people. There's nothing in any Census Bureau thing that you're going to point to that is a law that in any way prohibits Native Americans from owning property. You are extrapolating from a situation to say, they don't care enough about human rights. I am fine. I'm not saying I'm fine with it. I would agree that generally Americans don't care enough about human rights in the right way, in all the right ways. I think they're wrong on trans rights. I think they're wrong on abortion rights. I could make a list of all this stuff like that. I don't understand the point of what you're calling about.
Maybe what I was trying to have is a more broader type of conversation in that sense. In matters of that point, of the point that we were trying to make.
Raven.
What?
Raven. We said you were going to ask me something about abortion. Do you have any other questions about abortion? Because if not, I'm moving on.
All right. So just so we can move on and let other calls come in. The fundamental question is, in that sense, would be, what would your perspective be in the next election and the next presidency in regards of abortion rights in North America and the United States? What could you see that could happen in that matter?
I don't even understand what you're asking. Are you asking me to make a prediction about what's going to happen? Because I'm not fucking doing that.
I wouldn't call a prediction more as of a potential analysis of where is and how could United States reach a better conclusion to that problem.
Are you asking me how I think we could solve the problem and reinstate abortion in the United States? Seriously?
As your analysis or your own personal opinion, I would like to see.
Americans need to get out and vote for people who will instantiate in their state constitutions a right to abortion, as Ohio just did, and as 7 or 6 other states have now done. And we need to make sure that we don't let Trump back into office and work to actually stack the Supreme Court to undo some of the decisions they've made. It's the same shit I've been saying for years.
And from a federal standpoint, would you agree of having a federal implementation of rule of law that would force that situation more evenly throughout the states?
That question doesn't make any sense to me. Are you asking me if I would support a federal constitutional guarantee of a right to abortion? Yes, as I've said for decades. But I don't think it's likely to happen. We just lost ground here, and I live in a country where a man who's indicted on a gazillion charges, who's the biggest idiot and liar in the history, is polling ahead of the current president. What I want to happen and what's likely to happen are two completely different things. But if all you're going to do is call and ask me if my opinions have changed in the last 20 years, not really.
And just one last question before I let you go. Would you, or how is the United States and activism in the United States approaching the ratification of those necessary instruments of human rights through legislative means? Do you see a future where the United States would equate to other countries that we have ratified those instruments and utilize them to protect civil rights?
I have no clue what you just asked me.
Okay. Then let me just quickly rephrase.
I think you just asked me, do I see a future in which the U.S. is going to agree with you and other people on human rights?
Not just agree, I mean ratify them through the legislative means.
I have no fucking idea, and neither does anybody else, because the world is on fucking fire right now. And while I would love for human rights to be the fucking focus, it cannot be, because everything else is falling the fuck apart. Are you to call and ask me if I think the U.S. is going to do better on civil rights in the future? I fucking hope so. But right now we're going backwards. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a fortune teller. I'm going to move on now, Raven.
Or fortune teller, but more on opinion. But I appreciate your time. I apologize if maybe translation-wise we've had
It's not translation. It's just you're expecting me to give an opinion about here's what I think's going to happen. I have no fucking clue. I can't even tell you if we're going to resume sanity and not elect Trump. And you're asking me about, do I think we're going to codify and robustly stand behind human rights declarations? I have no idea. I'd love to say we do. We got lots of work to do. I can't possibly make a prediction on that. I don't see any likelihood of any improvement at all right now.
And
Whoops. Yeah, I'm the guy that said that Trump wouldn't win back in 2016 on stage. Was very wrong. I'm the guy that said Roe v. Wade would never be overturned. Very wrong. If you're wanting to use my opinion as a barometer, you might be using it. Whatever I say, just bet on the opposite. But we have. I don't know if you guys saw this. I'm going to derail for just a minute, and then I'm going to come to you, Kevin. So I appreciate you waiting. The Republican Party is a festering cesspool of children, selfish children who do not understand or value human freedoms or dignity. In the past 36 hours, one Republican senator got up out of his chair threatening to fist fight a witness in a Senate hearing. The former Speaker of the House is now being accused of physically assaulting another representative. He denies it. Matt Gaetz has now brought charges against him. Marjorie Taylor Greene is still an incredible idiot who decided to try to age shame a Democratic representative and school her on something, only to have that 80-year-old school the fuck out of Marjorie Taylor Greene for being an idiot, because just because the House voted for a continuing resolution doesn't mean that we're not still on the verge of a government shutdown, because the Senate still has to approve it, and then Biden has to sign it. So Marjorie made a stupid, big surprise, accusation against someone and was ageist about it, suggesting that because they were 80, they needed to retire, when the reality is that Marjorie is a stupid, monumental piece of shit who should resign. But I can't predict anything right now. All I can predict is that I'm going to have more shit to talk about next week. That I don't see a lot of things getting better. And oh, by the way, in addition to, I'd love for there to be a wonderful stand on human rights by the United States, there's a war in Ukraine and a war in Gaza. And if you think that we're not involved or not going to be involved, you're wrong. We're going to have to be involved. And there's no solution to this shit. No, simple or easy solution. This isn't just we'll just go over and bomb the shit out of somebody and we're done. Talk about weapons of mass destruction. Now, we're screwed in many ways. Oh, yeah. And there's still climate change. I care about human rights probably more than the average person. We don't have time right now. It would be a waste of my time to sit here and speculate about whether or not there's going to be the United States doing a better job on her human rights issues. It would. I apologize, Raven, for my obvious frustration. You're a good person who's interested in human rights. Apart from informing people and getting them out to vote, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can say I'm more optimistic about voting after this last election than I have been for a little while. I got a bunch of calls that I want to get to. I'm going to get to Kevin right after these announcements. I can't promise that we're going to get to all those atheists. By the way, as a reminder, we're going to read all super chats over $5 this week instead of over 10. So if you haven't wanted to throw $5 in because you knew you weren't going to get your question asked, today's the actual day to do that. But we're already at the hour and a half point. I want to make sure I get to Kevin because Kevin is a theist from Florida, pronouns are he, him, and has a question about morality. So welcome, Kevin. You're on with me and me.
Hey, Matt and Matt. How's it going today or tonight?
Not too bad.
Nice. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, isn't technically, it seems like morality gets calculated by like a form of might makes right. Like when I see theists say, okay, well, we have to do these things because God said so. And if someone's like really afraid of pain or afraid of non-existence, if they believe in said religion, they'll be like, okay, I have to give into that because God has the might to do so and he will take it. And then it seems like under atheism, morality gets calculated the same way. Like, I don't want to go to prison or something like that. What are your thoughts on that? Is that true or am I off on that?
Well, divine command theory is definitely a might makes right. It's whatever God says goes because he's the one with the power. Under secular humanism, it's not about individuals or even governments or even collective individuals with power. You could view it in a way as sort of a might makes right, where the popular idea is the one that's definitely going to have the might and could be imposed. But one of the key principles of secular humanism is, which isn't atheism. Atheism has no morality, but I'm a secular humanist. One of the key principles is the value and dignity of the individual, as well as the process by which we would go through evaluating those processes to determine what morality is. One of my favorite things to point to, if somebody's going to roll their eyes, is Rawls' veil of ignorance. And that is, design the world you want to live in, not knowing who you will be in it. And so it's not a simple might makes right view from a secular humanist perspective. It is about principles. And by putting up a veil of ignorance, which is to say, hey, are we going to allow slavery? You get to decide whether we're going to allow slavery, but you don't know if you're going to come in as a slave or a slave owner. And once you start evaluating that under that veil of ignorance, that is how you remove as much of the human bias and the might-based bias as possible, because you don't know if you're going to be coming in as one of the powerful or one of the powerless. And so that leads to something that is not truly might makes right, but the enforcement of morality is always going to rest with power, but it doesn't mean that power serves as the reason for a particular principle. Does that make sense?
I think so. You said a lot there, and I'm just trying to process it all. Like when you brought up like slavery, I do understand. Like, okay, yeah. When I look at the Bible, I'm like, okay, clearly it does condone slavery, and I feel like my theist counterparts it comes across as excuse making. And sometimes it feels like the only satisfactory way I can explain to theists on this topic about why I think slavery is bad is because it'll regress us back into another civil war, is the only way, which is like kind of like a form of might makes right. Like, like that seems to be the only way I can do that. Does that make sense, I guess?
How is saying, I think you're maybe framing it wrong. Yeah, I don't agree that this is your only reason, but even using your reason, we shouldn't allow slavery because it may lead to a civil war. Now, if it leads to another civil war, what you're saying there is a civil war would demonstrably be bad for us. People would be killed. The nation would be, strapped. The world would be strapped. We would be financially dependent. It would waste resources, all kinds of things. All of those are genuine data points that are non-subjective about a worse world for us. And so even though I don't agree that saying, oh, we shouldn't have slavery because it might lead to a civil war, I think there are better reasons to say we shouldn't have slavery. Like, I don't want to be a slave, and neither does anyone else. But even if even if the example you gave was that, it's still not might makes right. It is, we want a better world, and this world that I'm describing is demonstrably worse.
Right.
Like, who would say that a world involved in a civil war is a better world than one not involved in a civil war?
Yeah, I guess it would be people that are like greedy for power or some selfish type of greed. And
that's why,
I guess,
why we have that veil of ignorance, because now you have to decide if you still want that, not knowing if you were going to be the powerful or the powerless.
Is there any way to express to people who are power hungry like that in society? Is there any way to get to them is there another way other than empathy, or is empathy the only way and hopefully they see it?
Well, empathy is a key element, but I mean, the biggest difference is like secular humanism tends to appeal to principles and then use data and discussion and debate to potentially change minds, whereas religions tend to use coercion and conversion, which doesn't really resolve the conflict. And I'm not aware of any objection to a secular moral system that is in any way solved by appealing to a religious one. So even if you just said, okay, secular moral system's not necessarily the best or not necessarily perfect or anything else, which I would not know anybody who would say it's perfect. But if you stack up secular morality against every religious system, it still comes out ahead because they don't do a better job at solving any of the problems. Now, one of the things they tend to point to, and this would be true, if everybody was a Christian of exactly the same type, or if everybody was a Mormon or a Muslim of exactly the same type, then we would solve a lot of problems, provided, because we're all now on the same page. We have the exact same list of do's and don'ts and moral values, and this is right and this is wrong, and now there's no more conflict. Unfortunately for them, that's a utopia we're not going to ever get to. And when you have a Christian and a Muslim and a Jew who all disagree on something, if any of them cite their religion and their God as the foundation for their position, how do you resolve that conflict? The nice thing about secular humanism is it starts with this thing of saying, we're not saying there is no God. We're not saying there is nothing supernatural. We're not saying, any of this stuff. What we're saying is we can't appeal to those things because the Jew is going to say, my God says this. The Muslim is going to say, my God says this. The Christian is going to say, my God says this. The Jain's going to say, here's my religious view on this. You're going to have all of them. And there's no way to resolve those without getting people to say, your religion is right and has priority over mine. Secular morality and secular humanism is sitting here saying, okay, we have to solve these problems. And the one thing we can agree on is that we have to solve these problems. And so if I let you appeal to your God and you appeal to your God and you appeal to your God, we're going to get nowhere. So why not just say nobody gets to appeal to their God? Instead, we have to solve this without appealing to God, at least until such time as a God comes down and says, hey, you guys got all this wrong. I'm the one true God, and here's the answer.
And so you're saying in the meantime, if new concepts come up, if new systems in society come up, you solve those through civil discussions on establishing new laws for those times, I guess. If we were to go out into space, it's like, okay, now we need to set up space laws, and we do that through discussion and reasoning and talking to and finding out what the best way is to go about that.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you've got a set of base principles. We've outlined it in 3 different secular humanist manifestos. I prefer the second one for quite a few things, but there are some improvements in the third one. But yeah, you have your core principles, and all of your core principles are subject to revision if you find out that a better world will result from changing that. If it turns out, for example, in Secular Humanist Manifesto 2, I believe it includes abortion as an aspect of individual autonomy, something I fully support. But if it turned out that data clearly demonstrated that permitting a choice on abortion demonstrably led to a worse world, then secular humanism would have to be in a position where they have to say, okay, this is what we used to think. We now have data that suggests we were just wrong about this thing. And so now that position changes. So secular humanism isn't a list of thou shalts and thou shalt nots. It's a list of principles that are subject to revision. And you can start with really simple things like health is preferable to sickness and life is generally preferable to death. And that sometimes death may be preferable to life, especially when you're unhealthy. Secular humanism allows for all those things, provided we have data to support them. And where we don't have good data to allow us to make a decision, we err on the side of individual freedom and individual autonomy. So there's 2 possible ways to do this, which is to say nobody has any freedom to do anything until we specifically say you can, in which case you're screwed from the start, because the first thing you got to do is give yourself permission to give yourself permission. And what was the foundation you used to give yourself permission? But the better thing is to say everybody has complete freedom, and we will limit freedoms where there's a compelling interest. Like you can light a fire in your front yard up to a limit. I mean, I live in Austin, Texas. I'm not allowed to shoot off fireworks on the 4th of July in front of my house almost ever. And that's because you laugh. The house across the street from me burned down when somebody did it. It's incredibly dry. It's incredibly dry here. And when you shoot off fireworks, you're not putting other homes at risk. And even if you set your own home on fire, you're at risk of that spreading to an entire neighborhood. So there are good reasons to limit some freedoms. There are places outside of Austin where you can go shoot your fireworks, and there are places where you can go watch them where they're constructed by the city. That's one of those areas where there's a compelling reason by the state to say, yeah, we're going to limit your freedom in this area. And we go along with it because, yeah, some of us would like a house to live in and a neighborhood that's not on fire.
And I guess a final note on that is, I'm assuming this is that, a majority of us do seem to have this like, hey, we like life. We want to, make the best of it kind of thing. And we can team up with the people that want this, and we can team against the people that go against this type of end goal, I guess, because it's just pretty self-explanatory that that's the desired goal for us, if that makes sense. Does that sound right to you? Or
what? One more time?
I was just saying how a lot of us naturally seem to agree that, yeah, life is amazing, life is awesome, let's do the most, like, we want to like build our lives up as best as we can, as well as help others. And to the people out there that just seem to be against this, that do destructive forms of behavior towards everyone, we could just team up against them in society, if you will, to prevent them from causing those things, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of those types of people.
Yeah, there's a reason why. So right now, for example, our prison system is one of the ways we end up doing this. But our prison system is a hot mess, and it is not successful. It's successful in keeping some people from doing additional harm, but it's not successful at all with regard to like rehabilitation or correcting things. And recidivism rates are bad, and the prison system often makes someone worse, because if you get out of prison after serving your time and now you're a convicted felon with fewer job opportunities and everything else, then your chances of recidivism for some things increases, and your options narrow it down. We need to do a better job in those areas. But yes, for the people who it's just like you're in your own house. If you, setting aside family, because family complicates things, if you got a 4-bedroom house, you and 3 roommates, then this is a no-brainer to say each one of us has our own bedroom, and we can do whatever we want in our own bedroom within some limits. You can't have your music so loud at certain times because that music leaves your area. You can't keep food in your room because that gets bug infestations for everybody else. But by and large, if you go watch whatever you want to watch in your room, have sex with whoever you want to, provided it's consenting adults, blah, blah, blah. That's for the bedrooms. Then for the common area, we're going to need to compromise, which is this area belongs to all of us. And so we're all going to have to keep it clean, and we're going to have to make, if several of us want to use it, if you want to have your Bible study downstairs in the living room with your friends, cool. We just need to make sure that we have a schedule so that people know when it is, and that one person in the house isn't getting more time and more access to it than anybody else. And if we're not able to come up with a compromise, then we just don't allow, use that common space. There is an easy way to do that. Take that same model, expand it to a college campus, expand it to a town, expand it to a city, expand it to a nation, expand it to a planet. It's the same principles. And that is that we're going to have to share space here. We need to find solutions that work. And under no circumstances is someone saying, my God told me I get to use the living room, an acceptable justification for using it. Because your God's irrelevant in the house that we share. It's up to the consensus of us. And that's probably one of the most powerful things about secular humanism. And I addressed this in my opening against Andrew recently, which is that secular humanism is us declaring, here's what we value and what we're going to do about it. Because us declaring it is infinitely more powerful than some people saying, my God declares it. I have no evidence that any God's ever declared anything. None of them seem to want to step up and fix anything. None of them will even call into the show and have a conversation. Mm-hmm. So I have no interest. And if they are, they're sending the worst representatives more often than not. And yet we've still got problems to solve. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of secular humanism and similar systems.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from with that moral stuff. I think I'm still I don't know, I still have this belief in God that I can't really, I don't know. I think I'm kind of believing at this point just for comfort. And it just makes me not have to think about things it's just like this, I don't have to worry about things later on in life. And so I can just it just helps me kind of clear those later on, well, what if this, what if that, or I don't know, the unknowns for me. It just gives me that placebo peace, if you will. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think what you're describing fits I think people will be shocked to find out exactly how many people are in that same position. And I was at one point as well. Not that you'll get over it. You may find a better reason. You may prove God exists and come back and change my mind. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you're not remotely alone in that mindset and the frustration of it. But it sounds like you're starting to realize that, oh yeah, if I'm mostly believing, so I don't have to think about these things, and that works almost all the time. What happens when it doesn't work? What happens when you get to a moral quandary or moral dilemma where the religious principles that you've adopted are in conflict with the rights and freedoms of someone you genuinely care about? That's maybe, if I don't, I'm not going to say, you may not be part of like an anti-gay church or anything like, who knows? You may have just like an abstract whatever, but at some point there's going to be a problem that your religious view may have failed to prepare you for. And because it's a rare problem, because you don't have to deal with it all the time, you're going to get there and be like, damn, what the fuck do I do now? And this is what happens to a lot of people is it'll be like, this is why there's this notion of a desperation, God, I'm begging you, oh, there's no atheists in foxholes. Yeah, there are. There's plenty of them. How dare those people disrespect the atheist members of our armed forces? But, oh, my child is suffering. There's nothing that modern medicine can do. God, I need a miracle. Well, if your religion prepared you to do nothing but desperately reach out and there's no answer forthcoming, aren't you automatically in worse position than if you had, and I'm not saying it's easy at all for like a secular humanist parent.
The stuff you're saying though. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. I don't have any kids. I got a niece and a nephew, and I can at least imagine what I would be going through if one of them were like on their deathbed. People shouldn't have to outlive their kids or the next generation. That's just awful. But I had a friend who's 15-year-old was dying of cancer. I think he died just shy of his 16th birthday. And her entire family was religious. I was not. And she would interact with her family and they would do, oh, God's praying, I'm praying and I'm doing everything we can to, support you and being loving and all this other things. But she would come to me on our lunch break to talk about things like pain management. I'm not a doctor, but we would discuss the options. What are the options with regard to pain management? What are the options with regard to treatment? Should we continue the chemo? Because chemotherapy is essentially, we're going to kill you and we hope we kill the cancer before we kill you. That's essentially how chemotherapy works. Dr. Ben can correct me if I'm wrong. But we would talk about those things, and I didn't fill her head with platitudes. And when her kid died, I didn't say God needed another angel in heaven. I just hugged her and told her how awful it was and that she had done everything as a parent that she could do. Religions don't often prepare you to be the support that somebody needs, especially if they're not identical to you on that religion. But anyway, I've gone on for ages now, Kevin. I got a couple other calls I want to get to, or we're going to end up doing a 9-hour show.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Matt. You have a good one.
Thanks,
You've
man.
given me a lot to think about. So
I appreciate that. Thanks for calling. All right. I got 2 calls left. I want to make a couple quick announcements, and then we're going to get to super chats. All the super chats over $5 are getting read tonight. Tonight. I need to view the queue and see how. Yeah. We'll get that. We'll get that done, even if you guys start spamming that right now. I want to take Sam in California is a theist pronouncer. He has a question about why does proving God's existence matter? So welcome to the show, Sam. How are you?
Doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I like it better when I've got a co-host, but and I didn't feel like doing the show, but man, the show's really made me feel better. So how can I help?
You got you and yourself. You're good.
Yeah, go ahead and ask your question, Sam. Let's see.
Yeah, so I was just curious. I'm watching a couple of videos, and I'm just sort of curious about something. for a lot of the people that I see talking about God and stuff, a lot of times there ends up being a thing of, you can't prove that God exists, which is fair. I'm sort of curious of what I'm thinking of, though. If you're more of a softer thing, because I like to think I'm reasonable and, let people have their own beliefs, don't push it on people, believe what you want to believe. If that's the case, is there really any issue of believing in God and knowing that you can't prove the existence of God? I don't know if that makes sense. That was sort of like an idea I was having, though.
Okay, I had thought about what you were asking, and then it seems like you're asking something else.
Sorry, I'm pretty bad at wording things, so I don't know if feel free to just talk about what you thought I was asking, maybe.
Okay, originally I thought you were asking, why should any of us care whether or not a God exists? Why not just let people believe whatever they believe? Is that the question?
Simply, yeah. But also in terms of just discussion in general, if let's say you're talking to someone who does believe, if, given aside the point that you can't prove it, how big of a detriment is that to their argument that, this is something they believe in, even though that they can't prove it?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and, just for the sake of one pedant out there who I know is watching, when we say prove it, we're talking colloquially. We're talking about making a reasonable demonstration. We're not talking about proof in the sense of logic or mathematics. So the reason it matters to me is because I used to believe and now I don't. And that means I was wrong. It's true that as far as I can tell, nobody has demonstrated God exists. I don't know that it's not that it's impossible. Somebody may be able to at some point. Maybe somebody has, and I just don't know about it. But if people are running around believing something that they can't demonstrate a good reason to actually believe, then that means every one of them has a model in their brain that is willing to accept something on insufficient evidence. And there's only two possibilities. Either that model only applies to a God, or it's going to apply to other things too. And what we know is that the God belief comes with a lot of baggage. And now there are billions of people, many of whom are going to vote and attempt to legislate what they think the views of their God are onto other people. If your God doesn't like abortion, you think your God doesn't like abortion, you are going to legislate away somebody else's right to choose whether they believe in your God or not. And the fact that we don't live in isolation means that what you believe about your God informs your actions, and your actions have consequences on me and everybody else. And so I care whether or not the beliefs are true, whether or not they're warranted. And if they're not warranted, then I should stand in opposition to them. Because if it turns out there's no good reason to believe in a God, then there are billions of people on this planet who are behaving irrationally and then imposing. I appreciate the fact that you're one of those people who's like, I believe what you want. First of all, it's not about what you want. Belief isn't a desire or a choice. You're either convinced there's a God or convinced that you should practice a particular religion, or you're not. And so because those actions have consequences on all of us, I think it's incredibly important. If there's a God and an afterlife, how is that not the most important thing? How is it not the case that the 100 or so years you might luckily get on this planet is non-existence almost in comparison to an eternity in an afterlife if your religion supports one? I can't think of anything that'd be more important. And on that front, for most of the religions that advocate for that, I can't think of anything that'd be less important than this life. And because of that, it allows people to do incredibly awful things. It allows people to become suicide bombers. It allows people to become abortion clinic bombers. It allows people to slaughter and kidnap innocent people because they think their God has granted them the right to this land. It encourages people to vote against their own best interests, which means now they're subject to manipulation by political hacks pretending to share their values when all they want is power and money. And so you'll get the billionaire class saying, yes, we're opposed to abortion and we're opposed to immigrants coming and taking your jobs and we're opposed to this. All of these things that tie into people's core values that they associate with their religious beliefs. Now, not only do you believe something without good reason, not only is it negatively impacting your life, but you're being used to benefit somebody else. I think that's all worth opposing.
That's fair, and that's actually a lot of great points. So thank you for those. If you don't mind, I just have one more, sort of digging a little bit deeper. Because those are all great points and absolute, great reasons. So more of a thought experiment of, in a bubble. Let's say your beliefs are. Let's say, you're not trying to push your beliefs on others. You don't vote with the beliefs. Like obviously, it's everybody has their own things. I will treat myself how I do this. In that sort of scenario, do you think there's any more importance for people to try to, prove it, or more just be open to it potentially being disproven if ever possible? So I don't know if that made sense. I'm just trying to think of, if it's not being something that's used to like take advantage of people or, push on other people, how then would you also rate the importance of that proof if someone just likes to believe in this?
Yeah, so I like Marvel movies, and I don't like all of them. Some of them were pretty bad, but I like them.
Fair enough.
My enjoyment of those isn't a position that I think likely impacts a lot of other people. It still does impact people because, first of all, it means Arden better like Marvel movies and stuff because I'm going to watch them and we're going to be together. And so it's nice that she likes a lot of the same stuff I like and some of it even more. But if I go and support those films, they're going to make more of them. And the more people who do, the more there are, which changes the landscape of this world. So even a thing about what movie I like eventually trickles down to impacting other people because we don't live in a vacuum. There are things that if you believe or if you like them, who cares? No big deal. I don't care if you like chocolate ice cream better than vanilla ice cream. I don't see what the impact is. But if somebody could show that chocolate ice cream was immoral, that the only way to acquire the components of chocolate ice cream ended up, just absolutely demolishing civilizations, then it does matter if you like chocolate ice cream. The deception, I think, is that we deceive ourselves quite often about, oh, this can't possibly impact anybody else. And this can't possibly impact any other belief I have. And I think those are little lies. And I'm less worried about those little lies than I am the bigger ones. But I still would rather we didn't engage in those little lies. And yeah, absolutely. So for the people who are like, hey, this belief that I have doesn't impact anybody else, you could be right. But that's not true for most religious beliefs. That's not true for a great many, political beliefs, which I'll go after. If religion were roughly the same as whether you preferred knitting to crochet, I don't think I'd be doing a show about that.
No, that makes complete sense, and I appreciate your answer on that because it definitely makes sense.
Crochet is superior, and people who knit are insane.
I do appreciate your response with that. Just it's good to have another sort of mindset on that because while I don't treat anyone different based on their beliefs, at the same time it does make sense that even sort of having this and sort of saying it doesn't really matter for you who it does, it matters even more. So it makes sense how it can absolutely sort of spiral when it might not seem that way.
Sweet. All right, Sam, I appreciate the call. I got one more call to get to before I start taking super chats, but thanks for calling in. I'm glad it was useful.
You too. Yeah, hope you.
Oh, I thought appreciate you too was a goodbye, so I'm sorry I cut you off right at the end. Final call for today before we move on to super chats. Oliver in Nebraska is an atheist with he, they pronouns and wants to ask something about a fear of hell. So how are you, Oliver?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I think I'm definitely in a much better mood than I was at about 10 minutes to 6 right before I went live.
That's good.
How can we end this strongly? What is your issue that I might be able to offer some thoughts on?
So I am an atheist. I was born into a family that is very strongly convicted of Christianity. They claim they're non-denominational. I think they're crazy. That's just because they're, yeah. But
oh my God.
I didn't hit the end button, so either someone did on some end, or
we've run out of funding. All right, Oliver, my sincere apologies. I don't know if we're actually going to get this thing fixed.
Yeah, we ran out of funding, so
yeah. We can message Jimmy and worry about that. For those who don't know, that'll be the end of the call-in portion of this. And Oliver, call me back either on the Sunday show or next Wednesday or whenever you can, or you can send an email and I will take some time to actually dig in and get you an answer. But we're gonna move on to the super chats. For those who don't know, we use Call-In Studio to handle all of our calls. And it's much better than most other options. We're looking into a variety of potential other options as well. But what we have to do is prepay for the minutes of usage. And when you're paying for 6 lines on multiple shows all week long, that's a lot of money to keep people on hold for, an hour or so listening to all this. And, yeah, on occasion, we get distracted and forget to top it off, and it runs out right in the show. Oh, it's amazing. So I'm going to read the super chats, and they're going to be all the super chats that are $5 or more. I appreciate everybody for your patience and putting up with a solo me or a duo me. I tried not to be too multiple personality-ish. I don't even know if there's a correct non-insensitive term for that. Well, let's just assume that I'm not a complete dipshit. And yeah. So yeah, basically what we're saying is send in more money. You guys, we've done so many call-in shows that we've run out of money for the thing. So send it in. I'm terrible about asking for money. I forget. I forget to announce super chats. I'm the worst person on this entire network. Everybody else is like, yes, give us money. And you guys do. And we're incredibly grateful for it. So yes, give us more money and we'll take more calls. It's your fault. It's your fault, every one of you out there in the audience that has not contributed today. It's your fault that Oliver didn't even get to ask their question. Anyway, $10 from Jared Bear Fuller. Thank you, Matt, for your years of dedication and education to atheism. You've been instrumental in my deconversion. I very much appreciate you and everything you do. Thank you. I don't know why that was so difficult for me to read, but thank you so much, Jared. I'm very happy. It'll be 20 years in March that I will have been doing live programs on TV taking calls. 20 years in March. It's going to be a good birthday year, 2024, because it was December of 2004 when I first called in. So actually, it'll be the end of 18 years. And so or the end of 19 years then. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It never gets old hearing that something that I said helped somebody. It makes it worth the prank callers, the name callers, the very confusing callers. Just the way it goes. Thanks, Gerber. From Felipe Toncoso, how are you new in ears? How are your new in-ears? Are they open or semi-open back? I usually have to keep one a little loose and not all the way in so I can hear myself when talking. I hear myself when talking because I have an audio mixer right here next to me, and so that's what my in-ears are plugged into. I'm hearing everything that's being sent to the studio and everything that's being sent from the studio because I have a full soundboard over here with things like I can make that, or if nobody here likes what I say, but I really like it, I can do that. I'm assuming you guys heard that, but they're basically earbuds with a wire that goes just around over the ear. But yeah, these are a cheap set that I got because I was using these Shure headsets, which I like better. They're more comfortable. They have a longer cable, but because they're modular where you can remove the earpieces and replace them, they develop shorts, and just putting a new earpiece in doesn't fix it. They develop a short. All right. Oh no, we got to 2 pages and that means I got to go back over. There we go. $5 for TaylorMade at 28. Matt, what's your favorite species of venomous snake? Mine's a gaboon viper. Do you own any venomous snakes? I don't own any hot snakes. Technically, hognose snakes are rear fang venomous, but they're not dangerous to human beings. And we have a handful of hognose snakes. I think my favorite, I really like eyelash vipers. I like vipers with color. Yeah, that's probably it. But no, we don't have any. $5 from Timmy. Top 5 Eminem songs. Oh my gosh. White America is probably way up there. And then I think maybe 2 or 3 more off of the Eminem show. I'm not going to be good at naming all of them. I can rap along with almost all of them. Not Rap God, but I wasn't that impressed by Rap God. I mean, it's great, but I'm going to put White America as probably my favorite Eminem song and just cop out on the rest of them. $10 from Kyle Ramstead. There are more men in atheist spaces. Do you believe that's because there are more men atheists or because those spaces are not welcoming to women? And what can we all do to make it more welcoming? Thank you, Kyle. That's a great question that we've been asked and we've discussed for the entire time I've been involved in the atheist community. So nearly 2 decades, and it probably was discussed a lot before then. I think the early explanation was that it's not, I don't think it's that there's necessarily more men who are atheists. It's that men in the West are in a position of power, and they're the ones with the freedom and the ability to risk being open about this stuff. It's just much easier for, a cishet white dude to be out. The consequences for me are less than it is for other people. And because of that, you start building a male-dominated group where a lot of women and non-binary folks aren't going to feel comfortable. And it's not that you did something wrong. If you have a table of 18 guys, it's just not as welcoming for people who aren't guys. And no guy there has to do anything wrong or be bad or be a problem for this to be true. It's just the nature of the culture that we're in, where there's like a tipping point. And eventually you get a group where there's enough women involved, enough binary people involved, or non-binary people involved, enough gay people involved, enough trans people involved, enough African Americans involved, enough Hispanics involved, where it will allow for more people who associate with them to feel like, this is a space that's welcoming to me. And it's not a problem that is easily fixed, and it's not a problem that the white guys are going to fix. I had great talks with David Tamayo from Hispanic American Free Thought about this, and I can't go out into, predominantly Mexican areas of Austin and say, hi, I'm from the, I'm from the Line Network. We're building an atheist community here. We'd like you to come hang out with us. You just can't do that. I can't go be the white savior for everybody. I can't go be the man savior for everybody. So what we need to do is make sure that every man that is showing up at those events is aware of the nature of this issue so that they are absolutely going above and beyond, not in an obnoxious way, but going above and beyond to make sure that people feel welcome and that the people know that we want them to be welcome. But mostly, if we want more women involved, you've got to get a handful of brave women who are willing to suck it up and put up with somebody being obnoxious or somebody hitting on them just a little bit in order for there to be other women there so that they can then come in and hopefully just fucking take over. $10 in Dark Claw. Hey, Matt, I was recently told by a theist that my belief in science was equivalent to their belief in God, since I had to rely on the word of scientists to confirm my beliefs. Why is this untrue? This is untrue because you're not relying on the word of scientists, and neither are scientists. They're relying on the data and the arguments. And science is specifically founded on this principle of peer review, which means that anybody can go out and attempt to replicate the results, see those results. There is nothing scientific about a God belief. It is not testable. It's not falsifiable. It is not subject to peer review. And it's the reason why there's over 1,000 denominations that all identify as Christian, all pointing to the same God and disagreeing on everything else. There'll be disagreements in science about how data should be interpreted or to what extent it should be viewed. But the process and way that we review that is dramatically different. Religion isn't even realistically comparable to science, and for them to say that you have just as much faith in science as I have in God is preposterous. And you and everybody else should be ready to point out why that's preposterous. If they think that God is as demonstrable as gravity, would they be thinking that if I was holding them off the top of a 5-story building? Is your God as easy to demonstrate as gravity? You think so? Because I can demonstrate gravity right now. Now, I would never do this. Use that as an example. Find something that's maybe not, as threatening. Because I'm have zero interest in threatening anybody. But it's just absurd to say that, my faith in God's just like your faith in science. No, it's fucking not. $20 in alleged money. I'm going to say it's only alleged money when it doesn't come from Kathleen. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Regarding the poll in chat, the best host tonight was Matt, clearly the right answer, and I'll fight anyone who picked Matt instead of Matt. Well, Matt appreciates that, and Matt would also suggest that you'd stop threatening to fight people. Leave that to the Republicans in Congress. Where's my rim shot? There we go. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Chat was wild tonight. Mad props to Cookie, Stephanie, Morgan, and Arden for being amazing. Eric was fine. You're gay, homie. Thank you, Monkey at Typewriter. And yes, huge thank you to Cookie, Stephanie, Morgan, and Arden. Arden's working her butt off down the hall. Everybody knows I'm biased, but she's genuinely awesome. And but I will say, I don't feel like I've had a good show if I don't get to see Cookies and Stephanie and Morgan and Dylan and everybody else who's in chat doing the moderation for us. I didn't get to pay as much attention to chat today, so I don't know how actually wild it was. I was expecting more wild callers. I don't know why they didn't call. I specifically put out the call, and I told call screeners, I'm taking calls on anything. If somebody wants to come in, they don't have to lie to you. If they want to hit me up on trans rights or gender identity or anything like that, I'm happy to take all those. And nobody really did. Although we did have to narrow one call to abortion and not abortion and Gaza. But all right, $5 for Skeptics and Scoundrels. Hey, man, I agree with Typewriter Monkey. That Eric guy should be hired and then immediately fired. I can't hire or fire anybody, but I'll vouch for you. And we'll hire and fire you real quick there, Eric. I think I sent the same one again. There we go. $10 from Paul Meixner. Who washed Washington's white woolen underwear when Washington's washerwoman went west? That's a pretty good almost tongue twister. Is that one supposed to be difficult? I find it funny that on a day when I'm having some difficulty putting words together, that I don't think I really struggled on that one, but I like that one. Who washed Washington's white woolen underwear when Washington's washerwoman went west? The answer is women. Another woman. $4.99 from Swanio. Yups. Is it moral to support an evil artist financially by purchasing their works as long as they're not using that money to directly support evil J.K. Rowling? Hey, Swanio. We've had this discussion over and over again. And we don't even have to do this just with, Rowling and trans stuff. There are tons of rock stars that are absolutely rapists. And some of them just bragged about it, about the young teens that they've had sex with in their time as a rock star. It's to the point of being cliche that, oh yes, there's a bunch of young girls lined up, ready to go into a rock star, unless it's the Go-Go's, in which case there's some young boys ready to line up and go in there. And I find it to be a personal decision that I don't have a hard position on. I can appreciate the art that someone creates separate from the person. Because if Hitler gave an accurate description of the law of identity, it wouldn't be wrong just because he's Hitler. And so if there's a piece of music or a piece of art that you like, that thing doesn't become bad just because the person that created it is perhaps awful or problematic or anything else. I won't be giving any more of my money to certain individuals. But fortunately, I already own all the Harry Potter books and movies, so if I ever wanted to watch them again or read them again, I could. I actually use one of the Harry Potter books in a magic trick that I do. I'm not going to stop doing the trick. It relates to audiences, and what I've done instead is it gave me a new joke. Because I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but there used to be a joke about how my church wouldn't let me read Harry Potter because it was about witchcraft. And now, instead of doing the witchcraft joke, instead, I'll talk about how I can't read Harry Potter because the author's a transphobe. So I get a joke out of there that plays with the lefties that I'm doing magic and skepticism stuff for. So cool. But yeah, it's a difficult situation. I don't know that there's an easy right answer. $20 from Coach Frankie. Hey, Matt, looking forward to watching debates on the line. Are there any other atheist debaters you like to watch? No, but don't take it to mean that there aren't others I like to watch. I just don't tend to watch debates. Unless I'm there in person, I probably don't watch very many atheist debates. It's because I'm so busy doing all this stuff. And, I've got a friendly acquaintance who used to host a podcast, and we'd see each other once every year or two. And it was always the inside joke of, hey, what are you up to? Because we're both busy producing content, so we don't get to listen to the other person's content. I love Seth Andrews. I don't get to listen to Seth's podcast stuff. I don't listen to Aron's stuff. It's rare. When somebody sends me a link or they're like, oh, there was something on this episode, or give me a timestamp, then I'll get to. But if I'm not busy doing a show or prepping for a show or doing a debate or prepping for a debate, I'm working with the snake stuff or finding downtime for me. But Jason James, lost my job, won't be able to support for a while. Love you folks. Please keep growing. Oh my gosh, take your $5 back. Look, I thank you, Jason. I'm going to assume that you're not going to miss this $5. If you're unemployed for a very long period of time and you missed the $5, contact me. I'll give it to you. I'll give it back to you. We want people to support us, but nobody was in a rough situation. There was a 10-year period where I spent a total of that 10 years. I spent a total of 4 of those 10 years unemployed at an 18-month stretch and then a 6-month stretch. And, so 4 out of 10 years I spent unemployed. I know what it's like. And my brother's between jobs right now too. if he started donating to me, I'd have to smack him silly, although I wouldn't smack him because he's awesome.
Just a quick clarification. While Matt is offering to give you $5 back if you wanted, that is a personal thing Matt is doing for this individual right this moment. That is not a policy or a thing that we actually even can do natively in the system. So if you accidentally send us $20 instead of $2, I'm sorry. There's literally nothing we can do except personally send it to you, and we do not have a policy on that. So please don't ask.
Yes, the Line Network will never refund or send back any money that you send at all. That was just me telling Jason. That's it. Thank you for clarifying that. See, people be like, oh, we're all going to be broke with Matt in charge. $10 from PhD Tony. Hey, Tony. Do you think that the assault on the U.S. education and electoral systems by religious conservatives over the past few decades has contributed to an electorate too ill-informed to make nuanced decisions? Yeah, but I don't think it's the primary reason. It's going to sound really bad. I genuinely think that our reliance on the internet has been an incredible boon because you have access to all kinds of information, but that means you also have access to all kinds of misinformation, and both the complex situation of having bad information and not being able to tell the difference and being exhausted and worn down. Like, I can tell you right now, I have difficulty, and even posted about it, finding sources that I trust to give me good information about what's going on in Gaza. Who did what, how, when. There are news sources, there are governments, and there are conflicting reports. I understand how people are falling for and being duped into believing things, especially when there's so much that is propagandized to take advantage of your best intentions. It's really easy to say there's children dying. I've done it myself. I think there's a lot of things that are contributing, and I'm not convinced that the assault on education with regard to trying to impose or oppose ideologies is even the prime contributor. I genuinely think we've made the world faster and messier than we're capable of keeping up with. And the algorithms that reinforce your biases by feeding you more of what you liked or what you saw and hiding more of what you don't like and what you see, while that is in principle wonderful, it keeps, I see much less racist comments in my stuff. But it also, it's not just like, an echo chamber. It also, it just skews your perspective, even if you're right. And it skews your perspective about what percentage of the population might even agree with you. I mean, I laughed. There wasn't a chance in hell Trump was going to get elected. And it's been this way for a while. $10 from Nathan Polyak. Matt, what's your take on Cenk Uygur's presidential run? Seems like grift to book sales. It could also hurt Biden since TYT is news that is priming its base to not vote Biden in general. I'm incredibly disappointed by this election cycle and the polling that I've seen just in general. My understanding of the law is that Cenk can run, but isn't eligible to win. And that makes him basically a spoiler. I suspect it'll probably sell him some books. But even if he were eligible to win, I'd still pick Biden over him every day because I don't agree with Cenk on a number of things. But I think he's got an interesting court case ahead of him. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but it'll be neat to see what happens. $10 from Chris Carrillo. Would you support age and term limits for Congress, Supreme Court justices, and state governors? Could this perpetuate ageism? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, Matt. And Matt, you're gay, homie. I think I would support term limits for all of those things. I don't know that I would support age limits. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, we're in a position where you'd have to constantly revise age limits based on new information as we continue to live longer. And also, my grandmother at 90 was sharper than anyone, well, either of the two front runners running for president in 2024 right now, and sharper than half the callers I've taken this year. So I don't know that age is the criteria. The sort of changes I'd like to see made probably wouldn't be constitutional. The ideal changes I would be opposed to. Things like, well, you should have to pass a basic civics test before you get to vote or run for office or be eligible to run for office. I'd love for people to have a good understanding of civics in general and the policies and procedures of the U.S. government before they're eligible to run for it. But that's in violation of the Constitution. And so it won't happen at all. I would have to oppose that. Excuse me. $10 from Paul Meixner. Final Fantasy XIV is the best of MMORPGs. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. I'm not a sheet slitter nor a sheet slitter's son, but I'll slit sheets until the sheet slitters come. Toy boat, toy boat. I didn't do that quite as fast as I might have been able to do it in the past, but I appreciate that. Thanks for the test, Paul. Woman, person, man, camera, TV. $4.99 from Billdozer. You have a skill for explaining concepts in a way anyone can understand. Thank you. Can you please explain the law of excluded middle? Hasn't clicked for me yet. All right. If you look at the three, there's identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. Imagine, so right now, if you can see the screen, imagine that your super chat is a Venn diagram. Get rid of everything on the screen except for just that blue border with your little chat point in there. Identity is that A equals A. Something is what it is. And so the text of your chat in that bubble is what it is. Law of non-contradiction is that something is not what it isn't, which means that your chat in there isn't some other bit of text. It's not Moby Dick. It's not the Bill of Rights. Those things would be outside of that circle in a Venn diagram. The law of excluded middle says that everything, everywhere, is either your chat or not your chat. That means War and Peace is not your chat. Pizza isn't your chat. The concept of a unicorn isn't your chat. Every single thing, conceptually or otherwise, is either A or not A. All it means is that in that Venn diagram where A is everything in the circle and not A is everything outside the circle, that Venn diagram describes everything, no matter what it is. Everything is either A or not A. One fancy way to say it is, all three of them, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, is that everything is what it is, isn't what it isn't, and nothing is neither or both. Which means nothing is both A and not A, and nothing is neither A nor not A. That's all excluded middle does. It just says that identity and non-contradiction are exhaustive. They cover all possibilities. That's it. Hopefully that helps. If it didn't, I don't know how else to explain that. I'm about to get off the second page. Raven 200 EM, $10 from the Raven 200. I like this Matt Dillahunty guy. He's so much better than Matt Dillahunty. The line should replace Matt Dillahunty with Matt Dillahunty. Jimmy, go take a cursed jutsu. Death, possession, blood from Haidon. Yeah, I think I might end up getting replaced by Matt Dillahunty. But I'm not going without a fight. Thanks, Raven. $10 from Lucifer. Keep up the great work, Matt. Thank you. And by the way, in ball pythons, in the Black-Eyed Lucy complex, there is a genetic morph called lemonback. We have a lemonback female. I know what the answer would be if I put it up for a poll, so I won't. But the lemonback morph is also called Lucifer. When we list our snakes that have lemonback, I list them as lemonback only because it's a little more common, but I'm really considering just listing them all as Lucifer. The biggest reason I don't is because just in case there ever ends up being two different lines, like there's a lemonback line and a Lucifer line, we got ours as a lemonback, and I want to maintain that labeling. If we had got one as a Lucifer, I'd be pointing out that we've got snakes with the Lucifer gene. $5 from Charlie Carrot for the Bills. Thank you. I don't know who Bill is, but I'll keep it for the Mats. Blade Runner sent a $20 super chat, crying hippo sticker that says epic fail because the call dropped on Oliver. Yeah. And we can blame you. Holy moly. We have 3 pages of super chats.
Yeah, if you wanted to raise the threshold, I could put a little banner up and we could raise it to 10 or even 20 to help us get through.
That's all right. I'm almost onto the first page. So, oh yeah, I am. All right. So as long as these don't roll off, nobody send any until I do at least 4 more so we can get caught up. And then you're free to send in, ridiculously high. Like if you want to send in $100 super chats, of course. Anyway, I'm going to try and get caught up. From LA Solar Surfers, Trump for jail 2024. That'd be cool. Bloop. Thanks so much, Silver Surfers. And $5 from Human. Hypothetical that is useless. Do you think religion was an inevitable belief, or could a society avoid it entirely? Asking for a species. I think that because we are imperfect thinkers, things like religions are inevitable. And a period that we got to work through, just like, I think it's inevitable that religions might start as like animism and spiritism and then gradually progress, getting vaguer in some areas and more specific in others, because it's all about whether or not you can falsify your beliefs. So yeah, I think mistakes in thinking combined with our propensity for dividing ourselves into groups and putting things in boxes guarantee that religion was seemingly inevitable for us. A non-social species, probably not inevitable for them. $10 from Michael Herskovitz. Appreciate all you do and the line team do. Appreciate all you and the line team do. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Jimmy's part of the line team, but he should definitely go fuck himself. $5 from Monkey Typewriter. Jimmy isn't even here and somehow he managed to ruin the show. Can someone fire that guy? Seriously, appreciated your calls tonight. Great show. Thank you so much, Monkey. We will beat Jimmy up. I just, honestly, I haven't got to hang out with Jimmy in a little while, so I don't want to beat him up. I will a little bit on your behalf, but I really just want to go hang out with him. I miss my buddy. $10 from Jifka. Here's $10 to help keep your phone lines open. We need more Theist callers to toss into the Dillahunty wood chipper. Fair. We don't get enough, but I love tonight's calls, and it demonstrates that things don't have to get nasty and you can have good conversations. $10 from the real McCoy. Can you two adopt me? I'm a 34-year-old grown adult, but my request still stands. In all seriousness, you've made a huge impact on my life, and I think all on the line. Thanks so much, real McCoy. And no, I can't adopt you for lots of reasons, not the least of which is there are already, unless you were to show up and just take care of all of the animals, in addition to contributing enough money to cover all of the expenses so that Arden and I could take a vacation, in which case then we would probably talk about, would you adopt somebody that did that?
Yeah, I think they'd need like a nice big down payment first as well, though. Like if you come with $100,000, I'd probably go in on that. That would solve.
You can buy our love. You can absolutely buy our love.
True.
Thanks so much. $5 from Valtava. I almost read that as Velveeta. Valtava Miley, which I'm sure I completely butchered. Please buy more minutes so I can call in and try again next time. Live long and prosper. Thank you so much. It was just a bit of an oversight where that shouldn't happen, but $10 from Ericopedia. Oh no, Oliver. Yes. I was really, really disappointed. I wanted to hear what they had to say. And I hope we will hear from them again. And briefly, for those people who might still be struggling with some sort of fear of hell that you were indoctrinated into believing while you were part of a religion, you're not alone. I've told the story before about people, have been out of religions for decades, still sometimes wake up with a fear of this hell that they were indoctrinated into believing. I'd recommend recoveringfromreligion.org as a primary, point to reach out. Also seculartherapy.org. And the one saying that I kind of came up with that has helped some people is this. How much time do you spend worrying about hells you weren't indoctrinated to believe in? It's not that you're fearful of it because you think it's true. You're fearful of it because somebody attached it to you and made it your boogeyman. And in the same way that hopefully, I don't know a lot of 70-year-olds that wake up with fear of monsters underneath their beds. Hopefully, all things will pass with time. $5 from allegedly human. Hail Sagan. Yes. $10 from Technomancer Magus. Some fun, so you never have to go back to modern day debates to pay the bills. They platform flat earthers and seem more interested in WWE-style debates rather than an actual pursuit of truth. I won't go back, even if I need money for the bills. There are other ways to do this, and it's not personal. There are a couple of individuals there who I genuinely like and get along with, but even those individuals, like James, I got no personal issue with James. I even get that he was in a very difficult spot. I walked out in the middle of a debate that was being live broadcast. It was their first time with a sponsor. And he made what I think is an incredibly poor decision to just continue platforming this fascist piece of shit and let people ask him questions because he thought, oh, this will be a way to counter some of what this guy says. And in my view, modern day debate got played. That guy was not there for a debate. He was there to promote his own debate channel, which is what he did at the very start of his opening statement, promoting his own stuff. He brought his own camera crew, I think, because there was somebody who shoved their camera directly in my face as I left. And I think he was just looking for sensationalized footage because it's all about clicks. It's all about, what views and what engagement can you get? And you get more engagement when you're awful sometimes. Yeah, I got my limits, and I won't be doing more there. Elizabeth B sent a $10 super chat, a sticker with a dude jumping, going, yippee! And we thank you, Elizabeth. That's wonderful. Plus, because you did it as a super chat sticker, I get to see a picture of Arden. I miss you.
I miss you too. I just sneezed. Ugh, God.
New Zealand $8.99 from Deepak Stevens. Here's to the call-in fund. Matt, you did a great job of keeping Matt in check. By the way, in the court of the Crimson King or Red. Interestingly, there's some sort of documentary we saw in the theaters that has something to do with In the Court of the Crimson King. It's like a 50-year anniversary thing for King Crimson. But I might be wrong about this. I'm looking this up. Discipline. But if you're going to make me choose between Court of the Crimson King or Red, I'm going to go with in the Court of the Crimson King.
Is that the wrestling one that we saw?
No, King Crimson's a band.
Okay.
With songs like Dillahunty, Mate Kudasai.
Okay. I was just thinking about Jeremy Allen White and Zac Efron all sweaty and, I thought it was
there was a trailer for a new film about the Von Erichs, and we will definitely be going to see that. But I want to go back to the theater because I want to watch that 50th anniversary thing of In the Court of the Crimson King. But I think Discipline, which if I remember right, has I think Discipline has Elephant Talk on it too, which is one of my favorites. I don't know. I have like a greatest hits thing that I just play so that I don't have to dig through all the other albums. So maybe I'm not a true fan. $5 from Jared Bear Fuller. Here's some extra dough so your Fergal won't feel Manergal. Thank you. You guys have been amazing tonight. $5 from Paul Meixner. Cats are weird little guys. Yes, they are. And I have to close the door to keep the cat out of this room from attacking me and jumping all over me when I'm on the show, when she ignores me the rest of the time if Arden is anywhere in the vicinity. When Arden's still asleep, the cat will come down and sit on me. The rest of the time, I'm just the guy that puts food in the bowl sometimes. $5 from The Raven. My top 5 favorite Eminem songs. Till I Collapse. Awesome. Haley song. Meh. Rap God. No. Lose Yourself. Yes. My Name Is. Yes. Yeah. Till I Collapse is awesome. I got a list. Here's the order of the list today. Yep. All right. I'm not going to do it because I'll look really silly. 49 from Port Claire. Hi, Claire. Why is it incorrect or a bad argument to say the Bible endorses abortion? Where does the Bible endorse abortion? I'm not even convinced the concept of abortion truly existed at the time that any significant portion of the Bible was there. There's a passage in Jeremiah. Is it Jeremiah 11:1 that is often used? I got my Bible thing open. Let me see if I can find it. It's often used to say that the Bible opposes abortion, but that's wrong. Or is it 111? Well, I'm not going to find it. It's before I formed you. I knew you before I formed you in the womb is basically what that passage is. And because of that, they'll say, oh, the Bible's opposed to abortion, or that this is, life begins before this. There's nothing in it that is clearly in opposition to abortion, but there's also nothing that endorses it that I'm aware of. The best you could do is maybe, if you try to say like, well, God kills innocent, so what? God can do whatever he wants. That's not abortion. And there is, if man struggles with a man and causes a miscarriage, there's punishment for that. But it's not death, weirdly. I don't know. I'd need to know what verse somebody was saying was the Bible endorsing abortion, but I don't think I'd buy it. I'd have to study a bit more. If you got a verse, let me know, Claire. 19 pounds from Turing Test 2. More money for the phone lines. Correct. And you guys dig deep so that we can take more calls this weekend and tomorrow on TACIS. $5 in alleged money from Christ Puncher. Random music question. What's your favorite punk band? And who's your favorite singer of any genre? Thanks for appreciating you do. Much appreciated. I don't know if I have a favorite punk band. And when it comes to categories, if the Violent Femmes count, despite what became of them, the Violent Femmes probably would be my favorite punk band, but people get really picky about whether it's, punk, folk punk, this punk, whatever. I don't know. Who's your favorite singer of any genre? It's really difficult asking me about favorites because I don't tend to have favorites. It's going to change from day to day, but I'll tell you the first name that popped in my head, even though it's probably not completely correct, is Alison Krauss. I think she genuinely has one of the most beautiful voices ever. But there's a lot of people that I'd put in that category. And then there's the people with the incredibly unique voices, where I'd listen to Tori Amos and Stevie Nicks, Peter Gabriel. Yeah, we can't go down a list of what's your favorite. I'm bad at favorites. Another $10 from Paul Meixner. It's Korn. A big lump with knobs. It's got the juice. I can't imagine a more beautiful thing. It's corn. I can tell you all about it. Look at this stuff. I tried with butter and everything changed. I have no idea what that's from, and I probably didn't read it correctly. But I'm grateful for the additional donation. Oh, here we go. $5 from Allison Jeanette. My father-in-law has an essentially terminal cancer diagnosis, and his family insists God can save him, but I'm an atheist nurse. What can I do here? Avoid the arguments and give your father-in-law the best medical advice that you feel comfortable giving in your situation, but mostly just love and care for your family. Especially, so there's a guy that I really like. We've never met. We've basically had like a couple of quick Twitter conversations only because he replies to everybody. And he's dying. He's got pancreatic cancer. He's been off treatment. I hope he makes it. He's religious and hoping for a miracle. I think it's incredibly unlikely. But despite the fact that I'm one of the most out atheists on the planet, I'm not only not going to go try and talk to him about his religion, he would have to message me and say, hey man, I really want to talk to someone who's an atheist about what I'm going through. I've had Christians do this before. Some people appreciate a sounding board to make sure that they're not, engaging in super gullibility or whatever. He would have to do that before I would even think about discussing his religious views with him. All I want is for him to enjoy whatever life he has left to the best of his capability and to keep following the science in an attempt to try to find some way to beat an absolutely terrible diagnosis. And it's not just him. I mean, on Tuesdays, Dave Warnock's here doing Dying Out Loud. And there's going to be a day where I show up on this show and talk about how my friend Dave's not with us anymore. I don't want to do that show. I recently had, you guys can go back and watch because I know I talked about it, and I'm already overwhelmed just thinking about it because this has already just been a 1-2 punch. I had a moderator on my Twitch who was also someone who I considered a friend, who we never met in person, never interacted in that way, but it was daily interactions, Dargendorp, who just died out of the blue. And yeah. So Allison, just keep loving and caring for people. Try to keep the peace. Try to make people happier. And just do what you know is right. But thanks so much. 10 euros from Yordim. Matt, what books are best to read to get a basic understanding of the philosophical topics you regularly talk about on the show, like logic, epistemology, critical thinking? Okay. There's not a single book that I can easily recommend, but I'll show you two, which I've already recommended today and about 50 times in the past, that do go through some of the basics of logic. One of them is literally this book, A Concise Introduction to Logic by Patrick J. Hurley. I know it's a college textbook, but it is a really good and easy recommend. Then when it comes to more conversational stuff, I tend to recommend Douglas Walton's Informal Logic, a Handbook for Critical Argumentation. But at no point is it necessarily the case that either of those books or any book is going to be the best way for you to learn. There are great resources and websites like Your Fallacy Is, even starting at the Wikipedia article that discusses the difference between validity and soundness. That's a great place. And then follow the footnotes. There's the entire, there's a couple of universities that have philosophical departments content just up for everybody to read. Really good resources there. $9.99 from Heretic Reptiles. Holy moly. Just wanted to donate and say it's fun to hear about atheism and snakes. Hi, Matt and Arden. Hello, Heretic Reptiles. That's a great little logo, too. I even with my glasses, I can't completely tell.
Looks like a hognose, at least on the top, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Bull snake, maybe.
It almost looks like a hognose and a file snake, but I don't know.
They're cute.
They're small enough.
Yeah, I think if I saw the full-size logo, we could tell.
We just got a couple new snakes, and next weekend we're getting two more that Aron and his family are holding for us. They have 2 Honduran milk snakes. And what are the morphs on those, honey?
A tangerine triple het for anery, albino, and hypo, and an albino that is double het for the other 2 hets in there.
Nice. And we also got a scaleless Texas rat snake just the other day, a scaleless corn snake that's still a baby. But we got a breeding pair of blacktail crebos, and they are glorious, we'll just say. So far, I've been incredibly impressed. They're all still in quarantine, but we'll be getting pictures. I don't think the crebos are going to go into bioactive enclosures, at least not for a while. We want to get used to their husbandry, and so they're going to start off, granted, they're still going to be in big enclosures, but they're going to start off with kind of paper and / probably a little aspen substrate just initially, until we get used to them and everything else, and then we'll build out their enclosures. I just don't know how well crebos do on bioactive. So if you keep crebos and you know how well they do in a bioactive enclosure, is it more hassle than it's worth, or is it actually easy? I know they tend to poop more and that their poop is messier and stinkier. I don't know if that works better in a bioactive or not. $5 for Monkey Head Typewriter. Here's $5 cover for Jason, unless you don't send it to Jason, in which case send this back to me, or is that not how this goes? That's not how it goes. I just conned you out of another $5. See, that's the whole thing. I made sure I screwed it up so that Arden had to warn everybody. That would get somebody to donate, and then I would not have to give Jason his money back. Somebody else would cover it, and now I'm probably just not going to give anything to anybody. And I'm probably going to take both of those, and I'm going to put it toward the snake fund. I'm just terrible like that. $9.99 from Port Claire. Would you consider art and people with similar beliefs to be atheists, even if they say they're theists? More and more people have vague beliefs now. Seems common in right-wing manosphere and philosophy pros. Yes. So art gets to identify however he wants, but what art described, I think, is at best the like Spinoza's God, which doesn't even truly qualify as deism. And so I would consider them atheists, but it's fine if they don't use the label. I don't care what label anybody use. And as long as he doesn't have to use the label, I don't have to explain to anybody why we have an atheist who's talking about a God that they believe in that's not real. But art gets to label himself, however. There's a number of people. If you're not convinced that a God in any normative sense exists, you're an atheist. Doesn't mean you're a secularist, doesn't mean you're a secular humanist, doesn't mean you're irrational, doesn't mean you're a skeptic. And I value all those things immensely more than whether or not somebody's an atheist. Only a few super chats left to go. Charlie Carrot sent $10 super chat. It's a dancing lemon man. I wish I was a dancing lemon man. Oh, there's a dancing lemon man in, not dancing, screeching lemon man in
Adventure Time.
What's that card? Adventure Time. Yes. Once upon a time, I probably could have done an imitation, but now I'm not.
What is it that he screams? Is it like inconceivable? Or no, that's from the
Princess Bride.
Princess Bride, yeah. Oh
I can't remember. I've scrubbed some of. I really liked Adventure Time, but there's other aspects that I scrubbed from my mind for a reason. But yeah. $5 from Brad Bingham. Matt, you are loved. Thank you. I have listened to you for the past 7 years. I appreciate all the content as usual. Jimmy, go fuck yourself. Arden, go fuck Matt, if you please. Well, at least you included the option.
If you say so.
Nope. The group has spoken. It must happen. $5 from Valtava Mali. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. I probably, since I knew what that was, I probably could have put some kind of spin on it, but that's a good donation. Oh boy. Paul Meixner for $5. Thank you again, Paul. You're incredibly generous this evening. Can we see the cat? If not, this is still for the cat. Cats are great. You can't see the cat because she's probably downstairs sleeping, pissed off. If Arden and I are in the same room with the door closed, she sits outside and whines. If we're in different rooms, she tries to sit outside of whatever door Arden's in, and then she gives up and goes downstairs and lays. There's a little couch with the bearded dragons are in an enclosure that backs up to a couch, and it's a little taller than the couch. So the glass, because bearded dragons need a lot of heat, the glass is very warm there. And so she literally lays on top of the couch, pressed up against the glass, nose to nose with a bearded dragon most of the time. $5 from Bernard. My broadcast has been listening for half the time you've been doing it. Love you and Matt. Fergie murdered my birdie's turtle. I'm drunk. Nice. I think that's a Fergal Burgle Minergal Burgle, but yeah, congrats on it, on having some adult beverages that you enjoyed. $5 from Brad Bingham. Because Jimmy isn't a responsible adult letting bills lapse, shaking my head. I'm a poor man, but clearly Jimmy needs this more than me. True. And by the way, it doesn't go to Jimmy. It goes directly to whoever's providing us the telephone service. And I'm going to try to make sure Jimmy doesn't get any money ever. It just should all go to the calls, because it's the calls that are, like a good chunk of the show. All the shows. $20 from Godfrey and Good. MD numbers 5. The ordeal of the bitter water mentions possible forcing a miscarriage in the case of suspected infidelity. Am I right? Arden Heart, Queen of Grace, you're my heroine. So yes, I think it's number 5. I'm not going to get the verse right, but yes, the ritual, that is to force a miscarriage, although they don't call it that at all. It is a test for essentially infidelity. So if you suspect that your wife's been getting jiggy with somebody else, you can make her drink this, and it'll basically get rid of that other man's, the result of his seed. It's not technically, it would be a little unfair to suggest that is in favor of abortion. But what you could do is, for the people who would argue that life begins at conception and abortion is wrong under all circumstances, you could definitely use that to say, clearly there's some circumstance under which it's okay to give someone an abortifacient potion that would result in the termination of that fetus. It's described in the Bible. You're not going to convince many people. You would be right. And Claire, if this is what you were talking about, there is a very limited case to be made on that. I just never think of it, because I know that there's a way to parse what the Bible says that is more nitpicky than the worst rules pedant you've ever had at any board game night in the history of board games, which is to say, Onan wasn't punished for spilling his seed on the ground. That's not a statement against masturbation. He was punished because he disobeyed God and did not impregnate his dead brother's wife the way he was supposed to. And you could spin that in a completely different direction. Similarly, you could look at this passage in Numbers and say, that is leaving it up to God about whether or not that fetus lives or not up to a doctor to remove it. And I wouldn't be surprised if people were okay with abortifacient pills because of this. But the only time you're allowed to do this is when you suspect infidelity as well. So it's a bit of a mess. The Bible, as Don Baker frequently said, is the big book of multiple choice. 5 pounds from Private Parts 70. Hello, Guru Matt. Can't you find Jimmy a nice trouser snake? No. I don't want to know anything about Jimmy's trouser snake. It's not an essential piece of knowledge for me. And this may well be the final super chat. We'll see. $5 from PhD Tony. Do you think there's anything we can do to slow the propagation of misinformation and disinformation over the internet and social media? Yes. And it's not the last super chat. Thanks, DJ. I love you. So there are a number of fact-checking resources. Things like Snopes.com. If we reliably, every time somebody pointed to some internet misinformation, responded with a link to sites like Snopes, I think that would be a help. If news sites had some sort of independent validation, like in the same way I get a blue check mark, not on Twitter because I'm not going to fucking pay him for that, but I get a blue check mark on Facebook or whatever because I'm legit, yo. I'm bona fide. If we had something more like that on news items, that would be helpful. But the other thing is there's an education aspect that has to get people aware that that type of fact checking is possible and to actually care about it, because you could put it on every news source and I don't know if it'd matter, because quite frankly, myself and most of the people I know are getting the bulk of their news from tweets, from comedians. Like I think John Oliver did a great job. He didn't get everything right, but he did a great job on the Gaza thing the other day. A better job than any of the news networks that I've watched have. Yeah, I think there's ways. I just don't know the best ways yet, and I don't know that we're quite there. But it's one of those things where maybe things have to get a whole lot worse before there's enough motivation to make it better. It's sad, but some of us really have to learn lessons the hard way. $9.99 from DJ. Matt, I heard you do debates on your own. I'd love to watch debates either here or on your channel. Well, you're in luck. Let me tell you a little bit about this network here. Tomorrow's the Transatlantic Call-In Show at 4 p.m. Central instead of 2 p.m. Central. So 5 hours before right now, tomorrow, which means in 19 hours, you need to tune in. Don't turn in, stay awake. To tune in to see Arden Hart and Dr. Ben do the Transatlantic Call-In Show tomorrow. On Sunday, it'll be Jimmy and probably me. I haven't heard anything about whether or not we're going to get to do the Reptile Show or not. Monday, Skeptalk with Forrest Valkai and Gordon Walker. Tuesday's Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock. Wednesday, I'll be back probably with an episode of The Hang Up with an unconfirmed guest. And if you go to QAline.com, there's a submission form there where you can apply to be a guest on InBoss. And Jimmy's going to be around soon to announce the other debate-like programs we're doing. So the best things you can do, if you like watching me debate and watching other people debate, and you're tired of sites like Modern Day Debates that are going to platform Nazis and let them just ramble, like and subscribe to the line right now. Support with your attention and participation on the various shows on this network, because I'm not the only one. And consider supporting us on Patreon, on YouTube, anywhere else you can, financially and or with your participation. That's the best way to make sure that you're going to get to see and participate in the debates I do. Now, I have my own channel. I will continue to post debates there afterwards. So you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Patreon. I guess I should suggest that. Everybody could just go over and sign up for my Patreon and just give like $1 a month. You know, I'd rather have 100 people give me $1 a month than one person give me $100 a month. But I get it. Times are tight. You got to take care of you. Brad Bingham, $5. Thank you so much, Brad. I wasn't live, still not live, but I really like the response. Thank you both. Appreciate it. And yet another $10 from Paul Meixner. Paul, you win. You are my favorite this evening. I'm just saying, if anybody else wants to be my favorite, you're going to have to do more than Paul. Transatlantic Call-In Show is the best show on the line. Facts. Paul's throwing out money and spitting facts with a great little avatar there as well. Thanks, Paul. $5 Canadian from 18 Miss Mechanical. All your debates with G-Man make me laugh. That's all. Except there are no debates with G-Man. Oh, I'm assuming you mean on the rare occasions where he called into something. Yes, that would be funny. I used to have a G-Man soundboard. Let's see. I'm not going to find it right now. I have it saved somewhere. I should search through my thing. Somebody gave me a link to the G-Man soundboard that they created, and I used to use it on occasion. That's it. Going. All right, this is your last chance. Last chance for a super chat. Getting red. Going once. Going twice. Sold. 18 Miss Mechanical gets the final super chat of the day. Arden Hart gets the producer of the day. I get the host of the day, and Matt gets co-host of the day. We're not going to do hashtag Team Matt or hashtag Team Matt. We probably should have. We should think of that next time. In any case, all kidding aside, first of all, huge thank you to everybody for participating and for the super chats and everything else. My apologies to Oliver and my apologies that the phone call went out. I would do my best to get back to you. I really hope you get an answer that you find helpful. There's a lot more coming. There's a lot more here on the line. I've already given you the links to the shows. Let me just say this. Once again, we're ending a Wednesday evening with me in a much, much better mood than I was in before the show started. When I found out J Mike was going to be busy, there's a part of me that was just like, you know, maybe it's worth it just to take a night off. It's really not. Don't get me wrong. I'm really good about taking my time and making sure we get time off and everything else. It's very rare that I've finished a show not being happy to have done it because I get great questions. I get people interacting. I get a sounding board for my ideas. I get to watch people in chat, say I'm right, say I'm wrong, call in, ask questions, help people. Because there's a lot of stuff in my life that I might not ever be able to fix. And so just to know that I was helpful to anybody is always a good thing. But to know that you guys are consistently helpful to me on Wednesday nights, I'm over the moon grateful. Go have an awesome evening and tune in tomorrow for the Transatlantic Call-In Show. We love you guys. Thanks to our moderators. Thanks to the call screeners. Thanks to Arden down the hall. Go for ending the show. No, you can't make me say that. Really? I have to say that? All right. Patreon.com/call the line. Nobody made me say that.